Welcome one and all. It's time for yet another red hot, spicy, tingling edition. Tournament report, Age of Sigmar, and it's an extra spooky edition this time, or spoopy if you will, because it's the Halloween Hoedown from the TSN Arena. Took place over the last couple of days. 5 spicy, succulent, tender, moist, juicy games of Age of Sigmar featuring the mighty Stormcast Eternals, the Hammers of Sigmar, back on the battlefield again. 2,000 points, and the first event since the Stormcast have had their massive point reductions, which means they can cram some extra juicy stuff into the list. So let's have a look immediately at my army. So, not too dissimilar from what I've been running in the recent past, but overall just more stuff and one notable unit that's making an appearance that you may not have seen for a while because they've been overpriced. But now, with a massive slash all the way down to 150 points, the Shield Annihilators actually get a look in, and they are into the list. Other than that, we've got the 2 lots of 3 Grand Hammer Annihilators as well, so Annihilator-tastic. We've got, of course, the Lord Imperator, who also has had his points slashed as well. So that whole combo has just come down drastically in points, Annihilators plus Imperator. So with 3 units, of course, that's going to be 1 to come down per turn, potentially, to get the maximum out of the 7-inch drop. We've got Liberators, they're back in fashion as well now that they've come down in points, and I think they are possibly the cheapest Battle Line Redeemer unit now, which makes them a good option. Also in Battle Line, because of Hammers of Sigmar, we've got the unit of 2 Fulminators and the 4 Tempesters that are doing some very good work at the moment. We've got the Knight Relictor, not the Lord Relictor, so the cheaper of the 2. He's also come down in points, I think, and all it means is that the re-rollable teleportation prayer, the translocation, is on a 3+ instead of a 2+, so it's still very, very reliable, and it's less points to take this cheaper version of him, and also his commands can only be issued 12 inches rather than 18, because he's a knight, not a lord. So the Lord Imperator is the one who is going to be issuing commands at long range in this list. The Lord Imperator, by the way, has the Arcane Tome, so he's going to be doing a little bit of spell casting or unbinding, and the Knight Relictor has got High Priest and Translocation, and is the general. We've got the Knight Incantor, who of course can unbind a spell per game automatically, and I've also given her Celestial Blades. Now I don't anticipate casting that very much, because most of the units that I would like to use it on, which are really only the Shield Annihilators could benefit from it, and the Fulminators and the Tempesters, most of those are probably going to be nowhere near the Knight Incantor most of the time. So I'm not anticipating using that much. She's really mostly there for that unbind ability, and also she can always Mystic Shield things as well. We've got the Knight Zephyros for teleporting about the place and just scoring battle tactics, leaping onto objectives and being generally annoying that way, not intending to do any damage. And I think that's everything. So battalions, we've got the Warlord Battalion, which unlocks extra upgrades. So I've gone for the 2 Holy Commands. So we've got Thunderbolt Volley for the long strikes. They have to get into the list, and so that means they're going to shoot once per game in the hero phase, and Call for Age, the Liberators can come back to life once. So a free unit of Liberators. So the points reductions mean that this list can now feature the Shield Annihilators in there. So pretty much before it would have just been everything else without them. So a whole extra unit for the point reductions. So I think that's looking pretty spicy, because they're not exactly a hammer unit, but they're decent at fighting for 150 points, being able to drop in and do mortal wounds. Mortal wounds on the charge the same as the Grand Hammers, they're just not quite as good at fighting once they get there, and slightly better armor save. So we'll see how it does. What do I think am I going to struggle against, perhaps, and what do I want to see opposite me on the table? Well, I want to see unprotected monsters with possibly 16 or 18 wounds. That's the sort of thing that I want to destroy. I've also got Wizard Finders, by the way, Wizard Finders Battalion, which the 2 Grand Hammer units are in. So that means any spellcasting monster is going to be a very juicy target for them, because they're going to increase their damage output against those things. So things like zombie dragons with a vampire on, anything like that. So those are the kind of things I want to see, because I've got good shooting, I've got the Tempesters, they're going to whittle wounds onto units, long strikes, always good, lots of breath from the Dracoths and the Tempesters crossbows, so good shooting, I can arrow in on maybe a couple of targets, and get people to spread their all-out defense in the shooting phase around, so they can only put it on one unit if I'm targeting more than one, which is what happens when you've only got the long strikes. As your only shooting output, the enemy can just all-out defense that one unit and get a good benefit from it, but if you're able to shoot at multiple units, obviously not all those shots are going to suffer from that. And then can get Grand Hammers into a big monster, reliably do enough wounds to kill it, especially if it's been shot a little bit. What do I not want to see? I don't want to see big walls of meat with really good ward saves, or the ability to come back to life, or the ability to just add models back to the unit, even when in combat, for instance. So, what kind of thing am I thinking there? What can come back to life in this game? So there are a couple of big notable heroes that can come back to life, or just can't die in general, but things that can come back. Talking about the Gits have got a great ability to bring units back at half strength, and do they get a rally bonus still, the Gits? Some armies with rally bonuses, we don't want to see that kind of thing. We don't want to see massive, maybe like Nurgle Chosen, something like that, where it's just too many wounds to get through in one go. So the Annihilators might go in, do some killing, but they won't wipe out a unit, and then they will definitely get killed back. So I want to see just nice killable targets. So big, like 16 wound monsters. That would be the dream. And let's go into game one. So we've got the Frigid Zephyr. So this game has 3 objectives, diagonally like that, and the territory is 1 table quarter. Oh, by the way, this is also the first event where the new Stormcast battle tactic is in play, and it's a very easy one, for my army anyway. It means that I just have to have a unit in each table quarter 6 inches away from the enemy. So the kind of units that can do that very easily, long strikes, they want to be away from the enemy. The Relictor can teleport a unit into that position very easily. I can drop units down from the sky who can do that, as long as they don't then charge the enemy or allow the enemy to like redeploy nearer to them. And the Knight Zephyros. So it should be a very easy battle tactic to get, because previously I'd been reliably doing about 3 per game, and occasionally 4. Very rarely was I achieving 5 per game. With this tactic, it should be 4 reliably, and then sometimes 5, which is a decent position to be in. So the notable thing about this battle plan is that the visibility is limited at the start of the game. So there is a squall. It is, how do they describe it? They actually describe it, it's a ferocious squall. What's ferocious about the enemy not seeing each other? I wouldn't say that's ferocious at all. So it's just like a fog that means you can't see each other more than 12 inches apart, which is fine and dandy with me, because most of my powerful shooting is 12-inch range. All the breath attacks and the Tempester crossbows, and the long strikes can just stay up in the sky until the squall dissipates if they want. So it doesn't really affect me too much. My opponent is a little bit more affected by it, with the Sons of Behemat. So let me pull up that list right now. And at this event there were a few new players. There were also a few players who I've seen at many events and who tend to place highly. This is one of those players who usually seems to do well. But Sons of Behemat, not the most fashionable army. And you may think, where are the giants? Well, the twist on this is that they're not Kraken-Eater Gargants. They are Krakens eating Gargants. So each one, I think one of them contains half of an actual Mega Gargants. The rest of them are tentacles on a ship, kind of pulling the survivors down into the depths. So it's kind of a Kraken army. So we have got, in this list, we've got, let's see, King Brod, who is this one. We have got 2 other Mega Gargants. One of them is a Gatebreaker and one is a Kraken Eater. So I think the Gatebreaker is the one that has the Arcane Tome. That has a wizard on it, which is... It's not one of these two. It's the third one, which isn't in this shot. So I think it's that one that's on the terrain there. So that one is the... Let's see, King Brod is the general. So that's King Brod. There's the the Gatebreaker. Gatebreaker, of course, is the one that can do a 50-50 chance at doing loads of mortal wounds in combat, which is scary. When you've got it wounded, it's very scary, because it's still just as powerful. And it's got decent throwing attack as well. And this is the new Sons of Bahamut list as well, so it has some different rules. So the interesting thing is that they can throw terrain at you. So rather than just destroying the terrain, they just pick it up and lob it at you, which is obviously quite terrifying. There is a... Let's see, the Kraken Eater is this one, I think, here, with most of a ship on it, and a few furry tentacles poking up from the depths. So it's a very nicely painted army, this. I would actually like to see what this player would do painting full Gargants, because I think they would look very good. So, I think pretty much everything is battle line as well, which means that my grand strategy of kill all the enemy battle line and have some of mine survive is pretty much out the window immediately. So I'm definitely not going to kill everything. There are 3 Man-Crusher Gargants as well, who are, let's see, one here, and there's another one up here, I think. On the table I've got Fulminators there, I've got Liberators, and what issue do I foresee here with the Gargants? Well, it's standard scoring, and the objectives don't turn on or off or anything weird like that, so they only really need to control 2, and they're always worth loads on the objectives, these Gargants. So they only have to control a small area of the table, either there or there, which is bad news for me because I would like them to spread out. I'd like to force them apart so that if I do manage to get a lot of stuff into one of the Gargants and kill it, they're not immediately then mopped up by another Gargant. And of course, if you've got 2 of them on the same objective, I'm never really going to shift that many wounds in a turn. So, let's have a look at who's in the sky. I've got the Tempesters, the Long Strikes, and all of my Annihilators in the sky, of course. So I can put 5 up there with 11 drops in total. And the Long Strikes are up there because there's no reason for them to be on the table yet, with the Squall in effect, so they don't want to come down and just not be able to shoot anything, and if they go to within 12 to shoot, they'll immediately die. So I'm just going to keep them back. The other option was to just leave them here, and then teleport them when the time's right, but I would rather not have them on the table if my opponent, for example, goes first in a round and the Squall dissipates, and then they can have a building thrown at them at long range. So I just don't want them on the table at all. Tempesters can just drop down and unleash loads of 12-inch shooting whether the Squall's in play or not. So, I am given the first turn. Now in general, my list wants to go second, because if I get a double turn, it's very bad news for the enemy, because I've got lots of shots. I've got lots of things dropping out the sky that might fail their charge, so giving them 2 bites at charging is always good. And even if they do make a charge and successfully kill something, those units are then certainly going to die if they get charged by anything. So giving them a second chance to charge something else as well is always a dream. So Long Strikes, Tempesters really want a double turn so they can shoot unmolested twice or 3 times if I get Thunderbolt Volley in as well, because when these guys come out the sky, that's going to be in the movement phase, so I won't be able to issue Thunderbolt Volley in that phase to them. So I would like to get the double so they can then have it issued immediately after, so shooting 3 times before the enemy have a chance to react, Tempesters shooting twice, and then even if I don't charge anything with them, if they charge me, I can then do an Unleash Hell, so I can fire multiple times if I get a double turn. So making me go first is usually a good idea, not always, so let me talk about that a little bit. So, obviously you don't want me to get a double turn with this list, it's very bad news for you. Are there reasons you might want to give me the first, or to take the first turn yourself? Yes. If you have lots of buffs that need to go up, and you need a turn to do that, because if you don't do it, then I could drop down and just obliterate things before they get defensive buffs up. That would be a pretty good reason for you to go first. and risk getting double turned if your buffs are that good. Another reason is depends what army you're playing and the objective layout. If I can pin your units away from the objectives by dropping out of the sky, but the Sons of Behemat don't really need to be worried about that, because anything I drop down and charge into combat isn't going to wipe out a full Mega Gargant, probably. And then it'll die immediately as soon as the Gargant strikes back, most likely. So they're not going to be tethered down for a turn. So it's not that much of an issue with me pinning the Gargants back, because they can even move over large buildings, the Mega Gargants. They can step over some of the terrain. Maybe not the massive ones, but they can definitely step over the smaller terrain. Because I think at the TSN, the height of the terrain is purely decorative. They're considered, I think anything apart from the large ones are considered small in terms of stepping over them. And the fact that the Mega Gargants can pick up the terrain and throw it anyway, which just removes it from play, means that it's very difficult to pin them down in one spot. So in this instance, I don't see a particularly easy way of pinning them back away from the objectives. But certain armies maybe would be wary of that. Anything where you don't want me just planting a line of Stormcast in front of you to hold you away from the objectives, that would be a reason to go first as well. So I don't think those are particularly relevant in this one. So I'm going first, because my opponent does not have 11 drops, obviously. And I immediately bless the Lord Imperator. It's not really going to have any relevance here, but I don't need to translocate any of my units. And I've gone for Magical Dominance, so just cast a spell and don't have it unbound. I'm already out of unbinding range, so that's going to be easy enough. And the Knight Zephyros teleports herself across the table with a bit of Mystic Shield on, so there's a successful spell. And the Fulminators put their toe on an objective. And I also, let's see, there was a Mini Gargant there, wasn't there? Yeah, underneath the boat there. So the Mini Gargant is gone, that's been shot off. So I decide to leave all my Annihilators up in turn 1, so that means I'm going to have to bring 2 of them down on the same turn now. But I thought, I don't really need them yet. I want the enemy to spread out a bit first. So in the enemy turn, my opponent goes for Magical Dominance as well. I think it's a safe bet, because I don't think I'm in unbind range either, because I don't want to be that close to the enemy, because I'm not nuts. So that's going to be easy enough to do. And one of the Mini Gargants, the Tentacle Lads, is making its way over to the Knight Zephyros there. And 2 of the Megas, which is, this one's King Broad, and there's the Gatebreaker, which is the Spellcaster. So that's the one I actually want to hit with my Grandhammer Annihilators, because I'm going to do extra damage to it. So if they're going to kill any Mega Gargant in one go, with shooting assistance probably, it would be that one. So that's going to be my first target. And this one is staying back a little bit, doesn't want to get hit by Fulminators too easily. So very cautious approach there from the Kraken Eater. And yeah, not very adventurous first turn. Yeah, so down 1 Mini Gargant, not much going on, and that's the end of turn. So just 5 points scored with objectives. So that one's taken. The Knight Zephyros, by the way, gets eaten, which is sad, obviously. And this objective's taken as well. So I'm on 1. Now, into round 2. My opponent is going first in the second round. I think I actually win the roll-off and give away the turn here, because if I just have 1 turn to attack these giants, I'm probably not going to take one out. And then they're going to hit me back maybe with a double turn. So they're so far away, I would just rather give them the turn. And on average, they won't reach the Fulminators. And what else are they going to kill? Liberators? I can bring them back to life anyway, and they're only 100 points-ish. So that's not a big loss. None of my important stuff really is on the table yet. So I'm giving away the turn. It means I'm giving away points, obviously, but it'd just be trading back and forth on the objectives anyway, even if I'm wiping out the Mini Gargants. So I'm just going to give away the turn and try and get a double. So Magical Dominance was already done. So Surround and Destroy is played now, which is the pick 3 different table edges, and 2 of them have to be wholly outside of your territory. So this is the Kraken Eater, goes for that table edge, and you can see it's destroyed this piece of terrain, which was this one here, is now gone. And Gargant's destroying terrain, not only is it just good to put wounds on people, because I think the squall has been lifted now, so it could throw terrain at me. Not only is it good just to throw terrain to do damage, it also clears a path, because the Gargant bases are so big, you're often limited where you can actually stand. So clearing a nice big open area of the battlefield means that you can get to the areas you need to be in much more easily as well. So 5 points scored again, but we could have a double Stormcast turn now. So I'm going to go all in, bring things down, and try and commit murder. So I'm going Surround and Destroy as well. So the Incanter is going over to that side. We've got Annihilators here. Tempesters there. So I dropped in the Annihilators and the Tempesters, and we have murdered the Gatebreaker. So good job from the Annihilators, and they all lived to tell the tale as well, because it didn't fall on them. So this is great news, because now if I get the double, that's going to be a full unit of Annihilators that can now charge King Brod. So that's going to be fun, if I get the next turn. The Fulminators have just come over this way, and I think the Gatebreaker redeployed away from them. Let's see where it was. So it was there, so it was almost level with this. So yeah, redeployed to get away, and then they didn't successfully charge it. I don't know if they actually tried. I don't think they did, because I didn't want multiple combats to be going on, because one Gargant could easily squash them. So I just wanted one combat at a time. And I also got rid of the mini Gargant here as well. So we've actually halved the number of enemy units, which is great. Obviously 2 of them are very hard hitting. The long strikes have come in as well, which is how I was able to take this guy out with extra shooting, and then shot this one off as well. So I've got loads left. My opponent's only got 3 units. If I get the next turn, is it game over in favour of the Stormcast? Well, what's going to happen? King Brod is going to have Finest Hour put on him if I get the next turn. So does that mean I'm not going to kill him? No. It makes it more difficult. So what would I do next? I would... Do I just put everything into taking out King Brod, even if he has Finest Hour put on him? I don't know if I would put absolutely everything into him, because if I kill this mini Gargant, that means there's only 2 enemy units for scoring then. So I could probably put a little bit into killing that, and then try and heavily damage Brod, and just throw everything I can at him, which would be the Annihilators into combat, the Tempesters shooting, and more Annihilators dropping down, probably here, to try and do mortal wounds to both units, and then more Annihilators charging into him. So potentially we could do some really good damage to him and kill this thing, which would mean that he would be in a very vulnerable state, because I don't think he would be able to kill both units of Annihilators in combat very easily. He would probably overkill on one unit, but he would have to split his attacks, of course. So I don't think he would kill 6 Annihilators in 2 different units in one go, because some of his attacks, there's not that many of them, so you have to be careful how you split them. So there's definitely going to be some Annihilators left alive after that, I think. So you would then have to deal with them the following turn. And if I'm doing that, would I also want Fulminators charging into the Gatebreaker? Probably not. So they might even try and have a go at Brod, especially if he like redeploys or something down here with the Annihilators getting closer to him. They could maybe come and have a go as well. So yeah, the double turn would be amazing here. If my opponent gets it, these Annihilators probably die from King Brod. The Tempesters could get charged by something. The mini Gargant could go after them and try and tie them up, potentially, or it could go after the long strikes, because the mini ones, I think, can run and charge. Then this guy will charge the Fulminators and probably kill them. So it's a drastic shift in how the battlefield looks, depending who gets the next turn. So I don't score that much, though, because I'm staying off the objectives, mostly. And my opponent wins the priority roll and goes next. So let's see. Is that mini... Which mini is that? Is that one? No, the other mini must be behind this and not dead. Okay, let me see. Is there a better angle that shows it? There it is. It moved all the way over here. So that one's not dead, by the way. I didn't shoot that one off. This one's taken some wounds. Not that one. So that one is now chasing down the Knight Incanter. This big Gatebreaker is going after the... Oh no, this is the Kraken Eater. The Kraken Eater is going after the Fulminators, as predicted. King Brod is not bothering with the Annihilators. So he's decided that they're so slow, why bother? Now, on the one hand, that's fine, because they can only move 4 inches. On the other hand, I've still got another chance to get a double turn with them now, so I could spend 1 turn running them, auto-running them to here, and then maybe they can get involved if I get the double. Also leaving the Tempesters alone, which is risky. So, this pit of terrain is thrown, and it might actually aim for the Annihilators, or maybe the Long Strikes, I don't remember. But you'll see that one of these Fulminators is dead. King Broad makes it into the Long Strikes from here, so that's a really big charge. And we've got the Mini Gargant into the Liberators. So they're going to get eaten, of course. Fulminator dealing with the Kraken Eater. Knight Incanter is dead. Liberators have got 1 wound left in the unit. Long Strikes are dead. Fulminators are dead. So I lied about that unit being killed. So there are 4 enemy units left, but 2 of them aren't that powerful, and there's 1 Liberator left alive. So what have I got to come in now? 2 units of Annihilators, 1 unit of Grandhammers, 1 unit of Shieldies. What am I going to try and accomplish now? Because the Tempesters can come and shoot this guy off. They can shoot him to death quite easily. I can put some Annihilators. These ones are going to run down here, hope for the double turn. I can bring Annihilators in to go after this guy, perhaps? Or I don't know if anyone's finest houred yet. So if anyone does, I could just go for the other one. So I've got some options. Let's see what I actually do though. So we've got the Grandhammer Annihilators drop down right here, and they fail their 7-inch charge. So yeah, very little happens. And the Shield Annihilators, let me see. Have I totally forgotten about them? Did they already do something? I don't remember what's going on with the Shield Annihilators right now, but if I brought them down earlier and didn't mention it, then that's just me forgetting that it happened because they were so pathetic. So, did I bring them down earlier in the game? Okay, I actually do remember now. So, you remember back when there was a Mini Gargant here. The reason that it died is because I brought down Shield Annihilators and killed it, and then it fell over and landed on them and killed the last one, or it killed the last Annihilator who then exploded and mortal wounded it to death, so they wiped out each other. So that's where the Shield Annihilators went. So, zooming back forwards again. So they failed their charge. Tempesters come down here, and I don't think they actually managed to get into shooting range of the Mini Gargant, unfortunately. So, very sad times, and Annihilators making their way as fast as their little legs will carry them this way. So, will I get the double and actually have a chance to capitalise? Yes, so I do get the double. And, okay, so we've got a very unfortunate situation now. So, the Tempesters charge into this guy, who's redeployed near King Broad. And with his position, I have basically eyeballed the distance here. I've thrown them into the Mini Gargant with the intention, because my battle tactic I think requires this Mini Gargant to be killed. So my plan is to charge them in, stay outside of 3 of King Broad, and then not activate them until everything else is gone, and then activate them just enough to kill this guy. Because King Broad would have to have already activated to kill the Liberator that charged into him. So that's the plan. Because the Mini Gargant tried to get his attacks onto the Liberator, but didn't kill him. So King Broad will have to kill the Liberator before he could do his attacks into the Tempesters. That is my plan. That's why the Liberator's gone in as well. However, just me not eyeballing the situation correctly, so there was actually space for King Broad to be within 3 inches to fight them, because he's got a 3-inch range. Wow, wow, wow. So that's going to be a failure. So that's going to lead to them being killed before they can actually complete the battle tactic. So just check your distances, folks. So the Annihilators that dropped down in the previous round go for the Kraken Eater in the corner. And there you go. Tempest is dead. And I was actually trying to shoot this guy off first, but as you can see, he barely took any shooting damage. So, very disappointing. So, just the 3 points for holding objectives. And now we're stuck with very little left to fight with, because the Annihilators just splattered against this guy and didn't really do anything in particular. So, it's already game over at this point, because too much has been lost, and that just confirms it. So, another thing, the reason I only scored 3 in round 1, that I don't think I mentioned actually. So, when I dropped down the Tempestors up here, there was a... I'm going to whiz all the way back and then come back again to show you. So, you see the way the Tempestors are laid out there, to get them in, all of them in range to shoot something that was over here. If I'd just rearranged them differently, I could have had one of them touching this objective. There was no reason at all not to do that, other than the fact they were going to charge afterwards. So I was just hoping they wouldn't be there anyway. But the fact that they failed to charge meant that all I had to do was just position them differently, so they're towing on the objective, or tailing on the objective, and that would have got me 2 more points in round 1. So it's just no reason not to do it, just oversight, because I was trying to charge with them, so wasn't too concerned where they were if they failed. So always think about, if you're going to do a charge, where are you now, because you might still be there at the end of the turn, and where will you end up if you do charge? Those are 2 things to consider. Don't just think about one of those. So, let's zoom back to where we were, and not into the next game. So, there's not much left alive. The Gargants don't need to kill anything. They can just sit on objectives and score enough points to win quite easily. So we've got Liberators fighting a mini Gargant. Not many more points are dished out for the rest of the game. For me at least. And my opponent is going to score some, but doesn't need to do much killing. Scores loads, and I think I've put the grand strategy down as 2 and it should be 3 there. So my opponent's obviously scored big all the way throughout the game, and I just couldn't stop them scoring, really. The objectives, there's only 3. Gargants don't need to cover too much ground to secure 2 of them, which is going to be enough because it's difficult for me to kick them off the objectives. Some of the Annihilators either failed their charge when they came in, or when they did charge, they didn't do enough damage. Got rid of 1 Mega Gargant, so that was good. Didn't get the double turn at the most important time, which was my chance to win the game, I think. And then after that, I did get a double, which wasn't that fruitful. I think it was a bit too late because I'd already lost a few things by then. And Mega Gargants, you would think they're a good idea to focus fire on something, but if they've stacked up some saves on them, they've got a lot of wounds, it's difficult to chew through. And yeah, it's just not ideal trying to put that many wounds onto a unit to get rid of it. So couldn't chew through enough, and in the end only killed 1 Mega and 1 Mini, which is very disappointing. And yeah, would have liked to have killed another Mega at some point. On to the next round then. So, no reward without risk. So this is 5 objectives in that kind of formation there. Got the diagonal deployments again, and this one, it doesn't clarify it in here, but at the venue you're not allowed to be within 9 of the enemy territory, so you can't set up in combat, as the book would possibly suggest you can do. And on this one, any wizard that dies, they explode and can damage units around them. Other than that, standard scoring. So on the one hand, that's a lot of objectives, that's good for hopping around. On the other hand, they are all close together. So that means that enemies that come in as a big lump can maybe just guard them. I'm up against the Sylvaneth. Now, you'll see that they are mostly set up in the corner, inside the wildwoods, which mean they can't be seen. So, I'm just going to pull up the list for this game. So, round 2. Viewing the Sylvaneth list. Okay, so there is the Spirit of Durthu, which is this big tree lad here. So what I remember about this guy, and a lot of the Sylvaneth tricks, is that they can charge you, punch you, and then disappear and hide. So you don't want to get charged by them. They also have really easy ways to bring models back. such as this unit of flying bugs here. If they are just near you, they can very easily just bring a model back to a unit. So I don't want to leave units partially alive. There is a unit of 6 Kurnoth Hunters with great swords, so that's 440 points. That's a very beefy unit, comparable in points to my Tempesters. There are 3 Kurnoth Hunters with bows inside the Wildwoods, which are very scary, but there's only 3 of them, so I'm not as concerned as if it was 6. There are 6 Revenant Seekers, which I think are these guys. 460 points, those 6. And they're not that amazing at fighting, but they do have good speed, obviously, and they can bring units back to life. There is a Hive Swarm, Endless Spell. And that's over there, so still in the shot. The other heroes, there's a Branch Witch, which is... I'm not sure which one's which, because there's a Branch Witch and there's another one as well. Is there another hero, or is it just the Branch Witch? Might just be the Branch Witch in the woods, actually. So we've got Durthu, Branch Witch, Kurnoths, 2 lots of 5 Tree Revenants, and I think they can teleport. There's lots of teleporting between terrain that this army can do, but obviously they can't do it if the enemy are near that piece of terrain, which is important. So there's overgrown terrain, there's this tower, there is... what else is overgrown? I think this piece of terrain and this one. So those are overgrown, so they can teleport between them, and they can maybe summon more Wildwoods to teleport between as well. So if I put units near those bits of terrain, then they can't be teleported onto. And we decide that these 2 pieces of terrain, because they're nice and flat on top, we're just going to use them as cover. The same as these 2 flat pieces here. Everything else is a big impassable view obscuring thing. I think that might be cover as well. So yeah, we decided that there's going to be a lot of cover on this table, just because it's possible to walk on it. So, what is my plan? The enemy are penned into the corner, but they can teleport out. So, what I want to do is keep them there so that they can't contest many of the objectives easily. And I want to put units tagging all the terrain that they could teleport to so they can't escape from the corner. That is the plan. So, if I have to go first, I'm going to just put down a wall and blast them to bits, hopefully, with shooting, and then get ready to unleash hell if they charge in. That is the plan anyway. If the enemy go first, what can they hit? Very unlikely to hit the Fulminators, because I've put them behind the Liberators here as a bit of a screen. So the Liberators could definitely die. Not much else. They'd have to be quite lucky to reach the Fulminators, I think. But I've also dangled them just close enough so it is theoretically possible that they could be hit. Because if you want to make your opponent choose to go first, you have to offer them something. Otherwise, why would they do it? Because everyone knows any kind of list that wants to land near you and is relying on a 7-inch charge, they're going to fail it sometimes. So they really want that double turn to mitigate that failure rate. And also, Tempesters and Long Strikes dropping in would love a double turn to shoot you twice. So I've got to dangle something out there to give the opponent some incentive to go first. So in this instance, they are actually penned in the corner a bit. So if they don't go first, they might get stuck there, which is one of the criteria I laid out earlier. The other one is that I've given them Fulminators to maybe have a long shot at fighting, because if you can get into them and kill them, that's obviously quite significant. And then you can always disappear after you've punched them. So, turn 1, my opponent does choose to go first, and does surround and destroy. So, Durthu, Spirit of Durthu, teleports over here. We've got some of the Tree Revenants, which are these little, not very powerful ones, going over towards the left, and these ones heading down to the bottom there. So, it's going to be difficult for me to land Annihilators, for example, in here. Not likely to happen. And the Kurnoth Hunters, 6 of them, here. So what could happen here, what would be really scary, is if, for instance, Durthu rolls like a 12 and ends up here. He can then pile in to fight the Fulminators, which would be very scary. If both of these units get in, the first one goes, wipes out the Liberators, the second one can then pile in towards the Fulminators and fight them that way. So, it is possible, but they both have to make it in with the charges. Durthu makes it in. And that's it. So Durthu makes it. The Kurnoths do not succeed with their charge. So Durthu wipes out the Liberators and then teleports away. But that means I can spend a command point and I put the Liberators right back in the exact same spot. So upon review, was this done correctly? Because he disappears, teleports himself away as soon as he's fought. These guys die, and then immediately I can then spend a command to bring a unit back. Those two things I think would be simultaneous. So is it because it's the Sylvaneth turn they can choose which one is first, and because he declared he was teleporting away, I can then bring them back? Is that how it works? Anyone who knows that for a fact, let me know, because this is the kind of thing that might come up in the future again. So otherwise I would have had to put them on a different objective. But as it stands, I've put them back as a screen in the same place again. And he's disappeared. So he killed Liberators, disappeared, and now I've got the chance for a double turn. So this is the dream. 5 points scored, but I can live with that. So the Kurnoths are out in the open. Perfect. I'm going to try and murder them to death. So my turn, I'm going to go for surround and destroy as well. So I'm going to try and get some table edges, which is easy when I've got a teleporting hero and another teleporting hero. So, to get the Kurnoths, I'm going to try to get the Liberators out the way, move the Fulminators in, charge them in, drop some Annihilators down, get them in as well, drop the Tempestors down here, and start shooting things up, and then hope to get another turn so I can do it again. That's the dream. So, look at that. So the Fulminator gets in, does some killing, and loses one of them, but they're 3 Kurnoth Hunters down now. And you can see that I've got Mystic Shield off on the Fulminators, all-out attack, and Celestial Blades. So just stacking up buffs on them. Tempestors drop down, and they shoot off 2 of these bugs, and the Annihilators failed their 7-inch charge when they came down, I think. So, not ideal from them, but I think that the long strike shot off this unit, I think, as well. So, yeah, because I didn't want them messing around, teleporting, or even charging my long strike, so I just shot the Tree Revenant unit off. I thought that was a good priority. So if I get the double turn, I would suggest that it's going to be game over. Because these Annihilators are certainly going to make it over there and make a charge. There's going to be more Annihilators coming in. The Tempestors will be able to shoot them up and then maybe charge them as well. And we've got more Annihilators to come down. So if I get the double, I would say it's probably damage limitation for the Sylvaneth at that point. Because not only will they have lost most of this stuff, they'll also, what they have left is trapped in the corner. Because I'll be tagging all the terrain that they could theoretically teleport to. You can see my Knight Incantor has been translocated up into the top corner to claim one of the table edges for the battle tactic there. So 5 points. Very strong position, and I get the next turn. So the immediate double, secure the battlefield, so I just have to have units in each table quarter 6 inches away from the enemy. So the Incantor is going to be able to do that quite handily. So I bring down my Shield Annihilators here, and they go after the other Tree Revenants, and they kill them. These Annihilators make it into the Kurnoths with the charge, and the Knight Zephyros heads over there. So the Fulminator decided to get out of combat. The reason for that is for my grand strategy, because my Tempestors are about to charge into the enemy lines, so they could feasibly get killed at some point. There is one Fulminator that I want to keep alive now. So he backs out of combat, and the Annihilators go in and do the work instead. I still have a unit of Annihilators to play with in turn 3 now, because the shield ones were deemed to be enough to deal with that unit, and I'm less bothered about the shield Annihilators getting stuck out in the open, because at least they're on an objective. And I'm currently touching all the terrain my opponent could teleport to, so I've completely wiped out the board apart from that corner. So, yeah, this is what happens when you get double turned. And I also killed all the bugs. So the Tempestors shot them, did some good damage, charged in and finished them all off. So they're all dead. So we've got the Kurnoths with the bows, we've got the Branch Witch, and we've got Spirit of Durthu left, and that's it. I also made sure to tag these guys with bows as well into combat, which meant that they could punch me, but also in their next turn they're not going to be able to shoot my long strikes, which are a very juicy target, very easy to kill with shooting. So, 5 points scored, killed almost everything, very good times. The enemy are just going to have to try and maximise their points now and try and get points where they can. So they immediately plant a Wildwood here, so they have got some options to maybe teleport now. And Durthu teleports over there. Branch Witch heads over there, and these guys are still stuck in combat with the Tempesters. They'll have to stay there and shoot them and then fight them, unless they want to back away. Durthu charges in to the Tempesters from over here. So, one of them's dead already. And yeah, only 1 point scored, because I think the battle tactic, if I didn't take a picture of one, it was probably a Sylvaneth one. It might have been something like kill a unit that's near an objective or near a Wildwood or something like that. So I think they failed it. So they just hold this objective and that's it. So a really underwhelming turn from the Sylvaneth. Durthu did not do much in combat at all, as you can tell, because there's only one dead Tempester. And who's going to get priority in round 3? It's me again. So, Magical Dominance, just cast a spell. Very easy to do, because I've got wizards that are miles away from the enemy. And yes, there's Mystic Shield onto these Annihilators. And some more Annihilators have dropped down. I've got 2 lots of Grand Hammers now. This unit came down fresh. And they will be attempting to charge into Durthu, of course. But I think they failed their charge as well. So the Shield Annihilators are going this way. And all the Grand Hammers are just hanging out in the middle of the table, because I'm on all the objectives. And battle going on between the Kurnoths and the Tempesters still. And yes, there's just one Tempester left. The Branch Witch gets in there as well. And I think this is this onto the enemy turn now? Must be. So Durthu goes after these Annihilators. The Branch Witch and the Kurnoths with the bows are trying to finish off the Tempesters. The Annihilators almost get wiped out immediately. But again, underwhelming turn for the Sylvaneth, so they only score 1 point again. So another failed battle tactic, and I can't remember which one it was, so I think it was another Sylvaneth one. And Sylvaneth do get the first crack at round 4 though, so they've got a chance to claw something back now with some magical mayhem. Kill a unit with a spell or endless spell. There are some units with like 1 wound left. And yep, so killed. Done the battle tactic, killed the last Tempester's final wound with a spell. And I use a command point to redeploy these Grand Hammers. So the reason for that, there are ways that this guy can be killed before combat. If the Spirit of Durthu does a shooting attack and kills this Annihilator, he could then charge into these ones afterwards. So I don't want to lose both of them. So when the Branch Witch comes this way, I measure, and I think it just strayed within 9, or maybe it was a different unit, but definitely something came within 9, so they've redeployed over here to minimise the threat of Durthu killing both units in one go. So the Annihilator does get killed. Durthu teleports away after combat into the Wildwoods, so it can't be shot. And 4 points, so decent scoring around there for the Sylvaneth, but they're still lagging behind a bit with the pace. So, what am I going to do now? If I want to kill anything, they're all up there in the corner. Who's left? There's a couple of Kurnoths with bows, the Spirit of Durthu, and the Branch Witch, who is here. So I can kill the Branch Witch easily, of course, and I can just stay on the objectives and score points. So intimidate the invaders, so get out of my territory. I've barely got anyone in my own territory at the moment anyway, so that's going to be easy. And just moving in, killing the Branch Witch, and staying on all the objectives. I don't need to go searching out the enemy, scoring another 5. And I get the first go at round 5, so I'm going to score 5 again if I can lead someone into the Maelstrom. So, as I was saying, 4 generally quite easy now for the Stormcast. The 5th one can be a struggle still, but it's situational. So if you have, for example, the Reprisal available to you throughout the game, that would be the 5th one. Led into the Maelstrom is one that can be done sometimes as well. Some of the Stormcast book tactics are occasionally relevant, like killing a unit of 10 models with a Dracothian unit of some kind. So, yeah, you can reliably do 4 usually, and then the 5th one is the one that's a bit dicey and situational. So I have to teleport some heroes over to try and get them to join in with the charging, and send a battle line unit in. So the Liberators charge in, and I think the Knight Zephyros just fails the charge, so it doesn't join in. So I'm not going to get the battle tactic there, but I'm still on all the objectives, so even though the Liberators get wiped out, that's fine. Score 3 points for objectives. And I've also got one Fulminator who's just running away from the enemy. So he's not going to die, which means that I think we both have the same battle tactic, the same grand strategy actually, which is Overshadow, which is to kill the enemy's battle line. So neither of us are going to get that. So that's why the Fulminator's hiding. It can't be reached now because the enemy can't teleport to any of this overgrown terrain because I'm touching all of it. So they're going to have to settle for killing the Knight Zephyros and just get 1 point for taking that objective off me, and that's it. So no grand strategy. So it's a nice, juicy win for me. And yeah, solid scoring throughout. Just failed the battle tactic at the end. No one got a grand strategy. And managing to successfully pin the Sylvaneth into the corner by tying up their terrain that they wanted to teleport to, and getting a nice early double to kill off most of their army. It's a winning combo. So next round we are on to Spring the Trap. Now, in a previous event, this is one of the battle plans that was not very favourable to me. Because obviously, having units off the table and jumping in to attack the enemy is a Stormcast trick, and on this mission everyone can just do it. On the other hand, it means you can put even more Stormcast units off the table and then bring them on, so you can have even less stuff on the table, which is a Stormcast dream. So, the reason it didn't do well for me at the last event was because I was playing against Scarbrand, who has a 3d6 charge. So when he comes off the edge of the table, he can then charge 3d6, which is way more likely to succeed than the scenario intends. So he's obviously very powerful on this one, but I'm not facing Scarbrand this time. So what am I facing? There are 3 objectives down the middle, very thin territory. I'm up against the Trogs. So it's an all-troll army. Now, this is, just looking at this, with the mission, I'm not very confident. So, it's very, very tough defensively. There are ward saves going off. This is the Trug's Trog Herd. So you've got Trug the Troggoth King in there. You've got a Trog Boss as well. So you've got these 2 big lads behind the shrine. You've got 6 Rock Gut Troggoths, 3 Fellwater Troggoths times 2. And then you've got 2 units of 2... no, 1 unit of 2 Dankhold Troggoths, and then another unit of 4. So the Dankhold ones are incredibly hard-hitting, incredibly powerful. So 1 unit of those, let's see, Dankhold Troggoths, 190 points for 2, or 380 points for 4. I think that's right. Is there a unit of 4 in there? Is that a mistake on the list? I thought it was just 2 units of 2. Yeah, I don't know. I'll look when I get a close-up in a minute. It could well be a unit of 4 somewhere. Could just be a misprint on the list, though. So, what are my issues with this? Well, they're going to have some good ward saves. They can bring units back to life. And that's the main one. They have a lot of wounds as well. A lot of wounds to chew through. And the stuff that I can kill that's going to be at the front is going to be the stuff that comes back to life and isn't the hard-hitting stuff. So anything I kill, I just can't do good trades against this army as it stands, because they're in a tight ball. They don't need to spread out because the objectives are always going to be here. All they have to do is march forward and control this area with a big ball of trogs, which is going to limit which of their units I can attack, because the Loon Shrine's here as well, so that can potentially guard them. If they advance beyond the Loon Shrine, they can build like a circle of trogs there with the good stuff maybe there. So it's going to be difficult for me to target them. Difficult to target them with shooting sometimes. My shooting's a bit more immune to the enemy hiding behind buildings, because obviously I can teleport my shooting or just drop it down from wherever I want. So, all in all, not confident at all, because the screens, which are the Fellwaters, they can come back to life, and if I'm trading a unit of Grand Hammers for them, that doesn't work out very good value, because they're 170 points, and they'll come back to life with possibly 2 models. Is it round up or down when they come back? I don't recall. But the Grand Hammers would probably get killed as a result of doing that, which is a more expensive unit than they are. So I don't see good trades for me here. So what I'm going to try and do immediately is kill one of the crucial pieces in the list, which is here. I think it might be the Dankhold Trog boss. It may well be. So I think if it is that unit that gives out some buffs and has the Arcane Tome as well, then that's the thing I want to try and kill immediately. So I've put my long strikes within range to shoot it in the hero phase, and they can definitely see it. So, giving my opponent the chance to go first, which I really would like my opponent to take, but maybe won't fall for that. But you risk that your critical piece of your army is going to get shot off before you've cast up or got off any buffs to your army. So, interesting decision. I still think it's very rare that you should ever go first against me. Very rare, I would say. I'm trying to think who's most reliant on their buffs getting up early in the game. Do Lumineth still work that way, where they need a turn, otherwise they're vulnerable, so they want to go first and get off all their buffs before you do anything to them? So I've got all my hard-hitting stuff off the table in reserve. Neither of us choose to put any units off in ambush, for the record, because the Trogs, they don't want to leave this bubble, which is wise. And I just don't need anyone off the table for that long, because I've got all my good stuff waiting off the table anyway. Anyone I want to protect is too far away to be damaged, really. The Imperatant needs to stay alive, but if he's off the table, that means I can't set up anyone 7 inches away in turn 1. And yeah, so nobody in ambush, so the scenario is kind of a waste in this situation. So, let's see. So we've got 4... I've got 6 rock guts. Yeah, so it is just 2 units of 2. Is it? Yeah, 2 units of 2 Dankholds. So there is a mistake in the list there, because it's got one of them down as being reinforced in here, when I don't think they actually are. Or is that true? Do they actually come in 1s? Okay, that could be the case. They could come in 1s and it's reinforced up to 2. Maybe, in which case there's still a mistake in the list, because it says here that one of them is twice the points of the other. Yes, there must be an issue going on with the list there. So we've got 4 of the really powerful Dankhold Troggoths, basically. There are the 2 big Trog heroes. So I want to shoot this one. And there's the long strikes looking out over their prey. So I have to go first, unfortunately, because my opponent doesn't fall for the ploy. But that could backfire if I shoot that unit off immediately. So, surround and destroy, easy to do. I've zapped my Liberators over there, keep the Imperatant here, and move the Zephyros over to that flank, so I've got the 3 table sections. I use Thunderbolt Volley to shoot, and then I shoot in the regular phase as well. I keep everyone else off the table. I do not manage to kill the unit. I intentionally stay away from all the objectives, because I don't want to get murdered. And the enemy could double turn now. And I would just rather keep my units alive, wait till they've come forward, and then drop down and then get aggressive. So, I don't kill the unit. I felt it was pointless trying to kill any of the other Trogs, because they'll come back to life or heal or something, or get rallied. So I just wanted to kill the hero, but didn't do it. I didn't do many wounds at all, actually. Didn't get too close to killing it. So the enemy score 5 points just from advancing up, and because of this terrain, I still don't have a really great place for Annihilators to go. So I'm just going to have to get aggressive in my next turn, because... well, actually, let's see who wins the roll-off first, because if I win the roll-off now, if I win priority, I am making my opponent go next. Because they're really far away, and there's very little I can do if I take the turn. So, let's find out. Well, my opponent wins the priority and gives me the turn, so I'm definitely not going to get any doubles anytime soon. So I just decide, you know what, I have to throw some units down there now. So we've got the Tempesters drop down for shooting purposes, throw in some shield Annihilators into the Fell Waters to clear a bit of a path, and the long strikes are over here to do some shooting. I teleported them over there onto an objective, and then they blast away. So I've killed off quite a few of the trogs, actually. Killed a few fell waters. And 5 points, because I've jumped onto some objectives. The Tempesters are relatively safe there, because they've got these Annihilators here who survived. So anything that wants to get them will have to go around the Annihilators, which makes it a bit more awkward. So it's going to be a very long charge for anybody that wants to get to them. And then, of course, you've got the Unleash Hell potential when you get there. The long strikes are pretty safe for the most part. And yep, so I've still got 2 lots of Grandhammers to come down in turn 3. I didn't feel the time was right for them at all. I didn't want to just throw them into fell waters and get killed. I want to keep them back and give one of them a 9-inch charge in the next round. So 5 points. What are the Trogs going to do about this? Well, the 2 Dankhold Trogs come over here, and they're going to try and make an 11-inch charge into the Tempesters. Over here, everyone's not really spreading out too much, but they are leaving gaps behind them now, so the Annihilators suddenly have options open to them. And let's see if they can make the charge. Yes, of course they can make an 11-inch charge. So, the Dankhold Troggoths make it into the Tempesters, and they kill 3 of them immediately. And these Annihilators are obviously going to get crunched as well by all the trolls in the world. The last Tempester does his best but gets killed. And there you go, 5 points for the Trogs. So, it's not quite game over, but Tempesters being killed by an 11-inch charge is obviously not something I was anticipating. It would have been nice of them to hang around a bit longer than that. So, into my next priority, and I am given the turn again. Because again, I would have given it to my opponent if we look at the wide shots. So these guys are now here, but there's nothing good for me on the table. So I'd just give the turn to my opponent and then try and get double again. Because there's nothing worth protecting out there right now. All my hard-hitting stuff, my 2 units of Annihilators and the Fulminators are still in the sky. So I would have just given the turn away, considering the Tempesters got killed. But my opponent wins the priority again and gives it to me. So I have to take the turn again. So I'm going for Magical Dominance this time. And I'm just going to cast a spell. Fulminators drop down here, staring at the 2 Dankholds. I've dropped some Annihilators down behind enemy lines, steam them in, kill one of those Dankholds, and then lose 1 in return. And my other Annihilators... Let's see. My other Grandhammers, I think, kamikazed into something. Because they don't seem to be visible right now. So I think they went in and then got killed. So I only have 3 points for that turn. Because I have a battle tactic and I have this objective. But I have got the Fulminators into play. And let's see if I can prevent them being charged for a turn. So my opponent goes for reprisal. Because, oh yeah, okay, so the other Annihilators killed the enemy general who was here. Which is the Trog boss. And then they got killed by the... Is that Trug? I think they got killed by Trug after that. So yeah, they did a decent job, killed the enemy general, then got killed themselves. Oh no, wait, they're not dead. So yeah, so reprisal is still in place. That means they have not been fully killed, the unit that did that. So they will be by the time the next picture comes around. They're just going to be murdered, because I think there was maybe 1 left around here somewhere, possibly. So they're dead. And all the Annihilators are now dead. So I don't have anything left that hits hard, apart from the Fulminators. And my opponent, I think, backs away from them. So 5 points. What are the Fulminators going to do? Charge in, kill 1 unit. That's not going to do me any good at this point, really, because the enemy can then just countercharge with 6 trolls. So, yeah, as I predicted, it's not very good trades that I'm able to do against this army. I haven't been able to get into anything with any significant damage dished out on my part. The shooting hasn't done as much, so that's limited what I've been able to kill. So I'd have liked to have killed both of those with shooting and the 2 Annihilators, but I think they have about 10 wounds each, those guys. So, obscene number of wounds. And to make matters worse, I think... Hold on, maybe we're not to that yet. So I have to go first in round 4 again, because my opponent keeps winning the priority and giving me the turn. So the Fulminators are going to charge into these dank holds. You'll notice this one has got a fresh dank hold Troggoth, because even though they're 10 wounds each, they can still be rallied, and one of them comes back on a 6. So I've barely killed anything now. I think I've killed the leader, and that's almost it. The Fell Waters are still running around with models in the unit. So killing back and forth. There's very little I can actually do now, other than just keep scoring a little bit each turn. So I did get 5 that time though, but it's not going to be enough because I can't stop my opponent scoring with the amount of trolls that are still alive. So, yep, eventually getting wiped out around here, giving away 5 points again, and then I go first in turn 5, which doesn't really matter at this point. I try and kill a unit with a spell or endless spell because I'm running out of battle tactics I can do at this stage, and I think I failed to do that. I think I wanted to do an arcane bolt maybe to kill this unit. Yeah, I wanted to shoot them up first with the long strikes and then leave just enough so that I could arcane bolt them to death, but I don't think it worked. So just the 1 point, and my opponent is then doesn't have to do much at all, can just sit on the objectives and score and win big. So, what went wrong? Well, it was pretty much what I thought would happen. There was no incentive for the trolls to break their formation, so I was never able to get to the good stuff early. And yeah, it's kind of a waste of time throwing yourself against the wall of trolls that can come back to life, and they're not worth as much as the units you're throwing in. So it's kind of similar situation to what happened in the last game, but from the other point of view. You saw the Spirit of Durthu charge into Liberators, kill them, fly away, and then they came back to life, so he effectively accomplished nothing, and then I got a double turn out of it. In this game, I had to just throw myself against the wall, basically, because there was nothing else to attack. When I did get into the meaty stuff, I did alright. I killed the boss, I killed one of the dank holds, but it was rallied back, so effectively didn't happen. So you probably have heard me talking on this channel before about how I think rally is the biggest load of nonsense in Age of Sigmar, and it should just go away entirely, apart from on very specific armies where it makes sense, like undead, for example. Even then, I'd generally limit the way it works. So, for example, zombies. Summoning zombies should be a thing, but it should be where units have been killed, where you could realistically create zombies. And if you're creating skeletons, I can understand the bones that you've just bomped on the head standing back up again because they've been freshly imbued with magic. I can understand anything that's bony, or demons, fresh demons being summoned in, fresh units specifically, rather than just rallying. I can buy probably Skaven rallying if they're close to one of their vermin tunnels, like you've got additional rats coming out to join the ranks. I can buy that. But most armies, why a Stormcast rallying, really? It's a bit silly. They kind of explode, they go back up, and then they stand up again from the battlefield, presumably. If he's shooting down fresh models down to the battlefield, why can't he be shooting down full units? So why can't you summon Stormcast if they can be rallied? If fresh ones can just appear out of nowhere, then yeah, I don't think Stormcast should be rallying. I don't think trolls should be rallying. I think trolls should have regeneration, so I think trolls should just regenerate their wounds. If you don't kill one, they should just go back to full health, probably. That should be how they heal. And yeah, get rid of rally. Games take long enough as it is. Don't make it take longer by making us kill units multiple times. So there's my rallying rant over for this video. I have to get one of those in every time. On to the next game. It is the Geomantic Pulse. So, first round you can't score very much. From that point on, you can score more, but you get extra points if you follow the pulse along. So whoever goes second in round 2 picks which side it starts on, and it makes its way across for the rest of the game. If you're on the pulse, you get lots of points. If you control the ones next to the pulse, you get points as well. So, what kind of army is good for this? Well, my army is pretty good at it because I can move my army around quite well. I can teleport things, so that's quite a handy thing to be able to do. Anyone who can be in one place and then follow the objective along, so fast armies would be good. The key scoring turns are turn 3 and 4, when these two objectives become the pulse, because that's the highest time you can score, because you've got 2 adjacent objectives then. So the middle of the table is arguably the most important place for that reason. So if you're an army that doesn't have great mobility, just staking a claim to the centre perhaps could be a way to go with this one. And what am I up against? It is Slaves to Darkness. So there's a couple of units in here that are generally things that I would like to avoid. So there are 6 Varangard, a unit of 6 there. That is the kind of unit I don't want to see opposite me, because 3 Varangard are 280 points. So if I can kill them, that is the example of a unit that is actually a really good trade. If Grandhammer Annihilators can kill something like that, that is a good trade. If they can kill it with a bit of shooting support, it's still a good trade, I think. And if they can kill 2 of them and then die and leave just 1, as long as they don't rally anymore, I'd say that's decent return, but in general you want to kill the unit. If both units obliterate each other, it's a good trade for the Annihilators. So that's the kind of unit you want to see up against you. On the other hand, they are survivable and they hit hard. That's why they're so expensive. So they're not an ideal squishy target to kill, even 3 of them. So if you can kill them, great, that's a great trade. A unit of 6 of them, not so much. 1 unit of Annihilators is not going to kill 6 Varangard in a million years. Even with lots of shooting support, they can have a good save, they can stack up their save on a unit like that. Chaos Knights are pretty good. Lots of these guys do extra damage or extra rend on the charge. You don't want to get hit by them, but my army is generally quite good at not being charged, because most of them are dropping out the sky. If it's a unit I care about not being charged, I can just put them up there. So, there's lots of run and charge available to this army, which again I'm not that concerned about, because all my good stuff is in the sky or hiding on the backboard edge, which is why you can see all my heroes hugging the edge of the table here, along with the long strikes, who are in range of those 2 units. Actually, I think in range would be here. So if I'm made to take the first turn, I'm going to translocate them here and then shoot in the hero phase. So at the moment, everyone's just hiding, apart from the Liberators, who I obviously don't care about. So, what else is in this list? There's a Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, which is there, which I believe has an always strikes first ability when it charges, which is good. Or once per game, fight twice as well ability. The Varangard can fight twice. I'm not sure about the Knights, whether they can, I can't remember, but the Varangard definitely can. They can fight twice once per game. So, very scary, especially this unit of 6 right here, fighting twice. That is going to be devastating. What would you want to use that against in my army? Probably the Tempesters. So you would want to kill the Tempesters with that unit. Then we've got... So the battle line is everything that isn't a hero as well. So again, my grand strategy is essentially out the window, and the enemy has the same grand strategy, so they may well accomplish that. Because I would have to kill 12 Varangard, 5 Chaos Knights, and 9 the Unmade, which is one of these units, 9 the Corvus Cabal, which is off the table, I think, deep striking, and 9 Untamed Beasts, which is another one of these units. I think it may be that one, because that's got a dog in there, so that's probably an Untamed Beast. Although if it's hanging around with the rest of them, surely it must be tamed a little bit. And I will get my triumph in this game, because my opponent is 10 points more than me, so I'll get a +1 to wound at some point in the game. There's a Chaos Sorcerer Lord as well, who is hanging out there. There are 2 actually, so 2 Sorcerer Lords. Let's see, one of them is... Let's see, they've both got Demonic Speed spell, and that gives Cavalry a 3d6 charge, so they can potentially run and charge 3d6, which is obviously very, very dangerous, but not so much to me at the moment, because all my good stuff is off the table. So is my opponent going to let me go first, or is my opponent going to take the first turn? In this situation, there is no good reason for my opponent to go first. It would be a suicidal move, so all you're going to do by taking the first turn is moving on to objectives when you can barely score anything in round 1 because the pulse hasn't started yet, so you can only score 1 point for objectives. You're not going to kill anything good because nothing good is on the table, and you will get doubled, and you will lose lots of units potentially to shooting. So you do not want to go first. I can't think of any reason why they would go first here. I haven't even tried to dangle anything there because I don't think it's going to be tempting enough in this mission. And also, you'd be moving forward and giving up your ability to screen out the Annihilators as well. So, just a bad idea. So my opponent, I've got all my hard-hitting stuff off the table, of course. My opponent has 1 unit off the table. So I'm made to go first, of course, so I go for Magical Dominance immediately. And my first spellcaster rolls a double 1 and wounds herself. So I'm going to rely on my Lord Imperatant to cast a spell to not fail a battle tactic. And he rolls a double 2. So he doesn't wound himself, but they both fail to cast a spell on a 5+ on 2 dice. Which means a failed battle tactic in turn 1. So I decide that I am not going to be given a double turn anytime soon, so I'm going to be aggressive actually. So what I want to do is put, because actually in this mission in particular, going second in the next round is probably beneficial, because you can then pick which side the pulse starts on as well. So that's another thing to consider. I want to wipe out the enemy stuff on this side. So I want to kill the Knights, I want to kill these Varangard. Kill 2 units. The only unit that can kill the Tempestors are the unit of 6 Varangard. If they come over here, it's not going to be a guaranteed charge by any means. They would have to get some of their magic off to make it easier. And if they do get in, I can unleash hell and maybe kill some of them. So if I use my Tempestors and these Shield Annihilators to kill both of these units, and then take out a couple of the 6 unit as well, I think that's a decent return, and it keeps the big unit of 6 right in the corner away from me as well. So the Liberators move and tow onto that objective just to get me a point, and I've kept my Hammer Annihilators in the sky and the Fulminators. So you can see I've shot off the Chaos Knights because I translocated the Long Strikes up there, so the Chaos Knights are gone. That's good. Killed the Varangard with the Annihilators, and just 1 point because I failed my battle tactic, of course, from inability to roll 5 on 2 dice to cast a spell twice. My opponent goes for Magical Dominance as well, which is going to be much easier. There are 2 wizards here who can do that. And one of them is casting twice, because if you go second, of course, under the current General's Handbook, you can do 2 spells with a wizard. And it's lucky that they did, because they both miscast. One of them miscast on 3 dice with a 111. So they both ended up wounding themselves, but one of them had already cast a spell, I think, by that point. So 1 spell went off uninterrupted, so that was enough for the battle tactic, but they did both wound themselves. And as soon as I see that happen, you might see a little glint in my eye, and I'm thinking, wounded wizards? That sounds like the kind of unit that some Annihilators might land next to, and finish off with mortal wounds just from landing. Interesting. That was my first thought there. So, a 9-inch charge for the 6 Varangard unit against the Tempestors. So we'll see if they can make that. And the Lord on, what's it even called? The Karkadrak wants to go after the Shield Annihilators to help out these Varangard against them. The wizards are just hanging out back there. Now, I'm not sure I would bother charging this guy in, because all you're doing there is leaving a gap for Annihilators potentially to land here. Maybe, because these guys are going to be gone. So I'm not sure. I don't know if the 7-inch stick was out to check that they couldn't fit back here or not, but just from across the table it looked like maybe that guy didn't want to go there. So they do make it in with a 9-inch charge, because the enemy love making their charges against me, except for those Kurnoth Hunters in the game against Sylvaneth, which was obviously a big deal. But everyone else seems to be making their charges without fail, even 11 inches, as the Troggoths proved. And the Tempestors seem to be on the receiving end of the very long charges more often than not. So they do actually kill one with Unleash Hell, which is good. And the Annihilators there are finished off. So 2 Tempestors remain, and then they die because this unit decides to attack twice, because they can just do that once per game. So I've killed 2 of them. So all in all, I didn't manage to kill this unit though, unfortunately. So if I'd killed them, the knights, and a third of this unit, I would have said that's not a bad trade. Because that unit's still on 2, it's not looking too great anymore. There are 4 still in that unit. Tempesta's gone. So, who's going to get priority? My opponent does, chooses to take... Oh, actually, no. I give my opponent the turn. So the Tempestas are dead, so there's no reason for me to take the next turn. I want to give it away, and then I can pick where the pulse starts. And because there are lots of heavy hitting... Those 2 are dead, by the way. So most of the heavy hitting stuff is on this side, so I want to start the pulse down here so it's away from them for as long as possible. And then I can bring things down and easily kill the units over here. So, I give away the turn, make my opponent go next so I can pick the location of the pulse, so I put it on the left, and now, I'm now set up to maybe get a double turn next time. So the one adjacent to a pulse is worth taking as well. So, the Varangard and this unit, which I think this is the Corvus Cabal? Could well be. They make their way down here, as does the Lord. And the unit of 4, there's 2 there, and the 4 in the corner make their way down a bit as well. So just filling up the objectives, there's the unit of 4, so they're still kind of out of the way. And these guys land out the sky just to claim this area, to give me a bit of a screen so I can't land anything here. Which would be a great place to land, because I could put wounds that way, and then charge something. So as it stands, where am I going to be able to land next turn? Here is a good place. That's probably the best place, somewhere around here, because then I can hit multiple units with the splash damage, maybe kill both the wizards with the landing splash, and then charge into those 2 and kill them. Or charge into these and kill them. That would be good. So, these guys actually get out of the way of that bit of potential trouble, and they go after the Liberators, who I slap a bit of all-out defense on to try and keep them alive. Doesn't work, so I bring back a fresh unit on the left flank with call for aid, so they're going to go after this unit next. So, I've now got the chance for a double turn, but my opponent has scored big. If I get a double turn from this point on, it is very bad news for the Slaves to Darkness. So, we're going to have Annihilators and Fulminators coming down now. The Annihilators are going to come down here. Their goal is to kill those 2 wizards. Then if I get the double turn, they will then try and kill these guys, because they'll probably kill this unit as well as the wizards. Because they'll drop down, maybe kill a wizard with mortal wounds, charge in, kill a wizard with the mortal wounds from charging, and then pile in and wipe out this unit. So I can rely on Annihilators to do that job, I think, because the wizards are both wounded. Then, if I get the double, they can then go and hit one of those 2 units. The Fulminators, I can bring down maybe to attack this unit, like here perhaps. And I can also be shooting this unit up as well. The Liberators are going to try and kill that unit. If I probably... Well, if the Annihilators get into combat, the Fulminators can go in at the same time, because the Annihilators won't be going after anything that's a threat in combat. So that means I could use the Fulminators first, activate them first. And then the Annihilators wouldn't be killed by this crummy unit here, or a wizard. So, it's a safe time to charge 2 units in together. So, into my turn 2, surround and destroy. So, I'm going to put the Knight Zephyros out to a flank as usual, teleporting. I'm going to put my long strikes back there still. The Fulminators come down and look at them. So, I was going to put them here, but I thought, you know what, if I shoot off one of those Varangard, suddenly it's a more difficult charge. So I put them in front so they're equidistant from all 3 of the Varangard, so whichever ones are taken off as casualties, it doesn't make it a longer charge. By the way, if anyone's watching this live, let me know in the chat. And don't forget to like the video, and obviously, give me all your money and Patreon and all that stuff. All your life savings, transfer them directly to me, so I can go to more tournaments and get more models. Annihilators. They do their bit of the job. They drop down, they charge in, they kill a wizard, and then they bash a wizard in the head, and they bash that whole unit in the head. So 3 units dead from that 1 unit of Annihilators, but I don't take the objective. And I do not successfully charge the Varangard, but I do get some good wounds on them with shooting. So, the Liberators get in there and kill some of this unit, but not enough to take the objective, which is the pulse, so I'm not going to score too big in this round. But if I get the double, I would suggest... Well, there's the roll. My dice is the golden one, so I do not get the double. The pulse slides along. So let's go back to a wide shot. So this unit's down to 1. I've got fulminators here. All these units are dead. I've got annihilators right here. The liberators are fighting them. With a double turn, I would suggest that my opponent is going to struggle to score points, big points, for the rest of the game. If I do not get the double, then my opponent is easily going to score big, because he's already on the one that's about to become the pulse, and holds this one, which is going to be adjacent to a pulse, so all they have to do is retreat from the liberators. And this unit is already holding another one that's adjacent to a pulse, so they're going to score massive points in the round. If I'd got the turn, the liberators would be able to stay in the fight with this unit, and probably kill more of them than they kill of me, so I'll then take this one. The fulminators charge in there. There's only 2 guys left, so with shooting as well, I should probably kill that unit. The annihilators then go and either kill the Lord or those 2 Varangard, but they would have a chance at doing that. They would have definitely had a chance at killing the Lord, especially because I could maybe shoot him first and then use the mortal wounds to kill him. Yeah, so the dream. The fulminators get into range here to charge them. I shoot. If the Lord's got lots of wounds left, shoot him, get him almost dead, charge him with the annihilators, finish him off, charge the fulminators in there, attack first with the fulminators. These guys, if they're still alive, which they probably wouldn't be, then could fight back. At that point, the annihilators who charged but killed him with the impact hits can then do a pile-in move of 3 inches, pile in up here. These Varangard wouldn't have been eligible to fight yet because they weren't within 3 inches. The annihilators with their 2-inch hammer range then pile in this way because they made a charge move and whomp that unit as well. So, remember, all these are dead. So we could have been looking at a total wipeout of the Slaves to Darkness, apart from the 4 Varangard up there and this chaff unit, which would have been a really good position to be in. But I did not get the priority, so that's not going to happen. But just theoretically, that was the dream game plan. That's the dream situation if you end up in that position. So I do not win it, so my opponent is just going to score big this turn, rather than scoring not much. So owns the pulse, owns the 2 adjacent because they're going to move out of combat, and is almost certainly going to kill him. Now, one of those has disappeared, has it? One of those Vanguard disappeared. I'm just going back. There were 2 there. What's going on here? Because it looks like there's only 1 there now. Okay, I see. No, I don't. So, I don't know what's happened there, but these guys come down this way, and they were here, they come down here, they try and make a charge. One of those Varangard might have died at some point. I don't know how. So they come down here. They want to charge the fulminators. So if they charge the fulminators, I would suggest that it's game over for me, because that means I'm not getting a charge bonus, I'm not wiping out that unit fast enough, and the enemy can start crunching through. So I redeploy them to get away, meaning it's now odds against the charge to succeed. And because I've also cast the -1 to charge rolls on them as well with the Incanter last turn. But they roll a 9-inch charge, which is exactly what they needed. So you can rely on the enemy to make the long charges, but you can't rely on Annihilators to make a 7-inch charge on the turn they come in. That's what I'm learning from this event so far. So we've got the Lord on Karkadrak in there into the Annihilators, and he's killed one of them, and then the other 2 are going to get hit by all this mess. So I don't know why there were 2 in the picture, but then there was just 1 suddenly, unless my eyes were deceiving me. So because the first one to strike, I think, is the Lord, doesn't finish off the Annihilators, my opponent then can't activate these guys first, so he has to activate them to finish off the last Annihilators, otherwise they would have had a good chance to kill him. Which means the Fulminators can strike first and kill one of these Varangard before they can strike. So then they do take some wounds, though, in retaliation, and the Annihilators are dead. So it's definitely not looking very healthy now. But it's not the end of the world, because I've got another unit of Annihilators to come in. The Fulminators are still alive, and I can easily translocate them away and then shoot this guy to death. That's the plan. So I'm going to translocate the Fulminators up here. So I'm going for secure the battlefield. So I need to have a unit in each table quarter. So how am I going to do that? Because they have to be 6 inches from the enemy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to translocate the Fulminators up here and use them to shoot the enemy and then try and get a double turn so I can then charge them. So they'll be in that table quarter. I've got the long strikes in this one. I've got a hero down in the corner in this one. I think it's the Imperatant. And I've got the Knight Zephyros who's going to teleport into that corner. So that should be safe. The Liberators are then going to charge in and try and take this objective. And my Annihilators have got a good chance to kill both of these now. So there are some wounds already on the Lord. There's the last Vanguard in a unit there. So if the Annihilators come down, do some mortal wounds, charge in, put the impact hits on one of them, kill it, then kill the other one in combat. So wipe out 2 units in one go. Liberators hopefully chip this unit down so I can take the objective off them. And then I'll have the pulse and an adjacent one as well. So we can get a decent round of scoring, but I'm probably not going to take this one off them yet. So you can see my opponent scored big in that round. You can get a really big score on this mission. So onto my 3 Fulminators get translocated over there and shoot. They shoot one of them off actually, but I'm not charging them because I don't want to fail the battle tactic. I'm only going to try and get the double and then charge them. The Liberators do some more killing, but it's not quite enough to whittle that unit down. And I charge the Incantor and the Knight Relictor into this last Vanguard because I decided I wanted to use the long strikes to shoot at somebody else instead. So what I actually did was, because I looked at the wound situation here, I wanted to shoot off the back one before the Annihilators got into combat. So I think he might have heroic recovered or something and got some more wounds back possibly. So I just shot him to death and then charged him in and killed the last one. I think I might have killed him with impact hits, but I couldn't afford to pile in and drag these Vanguard into combat because there's 3 of them. I'm not going to kill them all, and then I may lose the pulse because of that. So I'm just going to have to stay there and try and get the double. So I do score the pulse, but I've got some insurance against not getting the double turn here. So my opponent can only kill one of these with the Vanguard, and this guy's locked in combat. So we're kind of okay, but I would much rather get the next turn, because again, if I get the turn, the enemy pretty much gets tabled, which means they're not going to score any points in round 4 or 5. Because these guys are going to die from a double charge from the Annihilators and the Fulminators. This guy is either stuck there, or he gets killed by these 2, because he's not charging, so he's not that powerful. The Liberators will chew through them in another round, and the long strikes will probably kill most of this unit with 1 round of shooting. So yeah, the enemy would be mostly wiped out, I think, if I get the double turn. So let's find out. Nope. Lose the priority roll again. So my opponent is taking the next turn, of course, to avoid being tabled and not scoring any more points. So the Vanguard just moves out of combat just to keep it alive for the turn, because I think those 2 would have a good chance at finishing it off if they didn't. These guys run away from the Liberators just to keep them alive, because this objective is kind of pointless now, because it's no longer adjacent to the pulse, because the pulse has moved along one. And the Fulminators get surrounded. I do redeploy them just to move them a little bit further back, because there's no point unleashing hell, because I'm not going to kill a Vanguard with it. So they're ignoring the Annihilators, because this is the pulse now, which they control. They control both of these, actually. So they do manage to kill the Fulminators with the Vanguard, which is sad. And what can I achieve now? Well, again, I'm going to need a double turn, probably, because I need to stop the enemy scoring. So in my turn 4, led into the Maelstrom, I'm going to charge a hero and a battle line unit into combat, which are going to be the Liberators, and one of these heroes is going to try and charge the last Vanguard and stay alive. The other one, I want to teleport some units around to try and take objectives now. because I need a big scoring turn, so I need these two. The Pulse is here, so I need the Zephyros and maybe even the Relictor to go and tag some objectives. The Annihilators actually might be able to tag that objective, so I might only need one of them to tag over there. So, here we go. Annihilators do get a toe on that objective with an auto run with a command point. The Liberators finish off that unit. The Relictor ends up in combat at the end of the round with the Vanguard, so that is a battle tactic secured, and I own all the important objectives. So we've got a big scoring round, and going into the next round, it is actually close, because even though I'm behind, if I get the turn priority now, there is only these three models left and one Vanguard at the bottom. So if I go next, my opponent is not scoring any more points. I think that's pretty much a guarantee, because I've got the long strikes to shoot at the Vanguard, I've got the Annihilators to charge them. That's not a long charge, so I probably wouldn't move. I think it's probably 6-inch charge, so I'd probably stay there, because if I go to within 3, if I go to 3 away, they could redeploy. Which, actually, you know what? They couldn't, because the enemy does not have any heroes anymore, so they won't get any command points. I think. I don't think you get... Do you get 1 command point at the start of a turn, possibly? So, either way, the Annihilators should make that charge. If I shoot them, the closest one to them you can't really take away, because that's the middle one. So, I think if I get the double turn, I think I just win the game now, if I get the turn again. So, 3 turns in a row where I think if I get the double, it probably leads to a win. Let's find out. Nope. My opponent gets the next turn, so has another chance to score points, which is going to be enough to win the game, unfortunately, because I'm not going to be able to catch up. So, I think all those guys are dead, by the way. Yeah, because I think I shot that unit to death with the long strikes in the previous turn. So these guys are still alive, so they don't really need to do much, they just need to maybe take objectives. So they steam onto this one, which is now the Pulse, and this guy stays in combat, and yeah, they score some points, which is enough to win the game, because I'm not going to be able to catch up on my last turn. And I'm going for Intimidate the Invaders to get everyone in outside of my territory, which is very doable. The Knight Zephyros tries to clear them out off the objective to try and take it off them, which would give me more points. And yeah, unfortunately I can't translocate the Relictor onto this Pulse, because he just doesn't have enough space, because he has to be 9 inches away. So the only way would be to translocate him and then charge them, which is odds against it succeeding. So I shoot them and the Zephyros charges them, but with all that I don't manage to clear them out. So I've got an adjacent one to the Pulse, and the enemy is down to 2 models alive. There is this one here and one there. So actually, yeah, I did go for that in the end. The Relictor did translocate himself and then go for the charge, but it failed. So I've got quite a lot alive. I've got Liberators, I've got Annihilators, I've got Long Strikes, I've got 2 of my heroes, and I may even have a Lord Imperatant knocking around here somewhere. My opponent has 2 models left, but was able to just keep scoring all the way through the game steadily enough. You can see I started scoring towards the end of the game. My opponent gets the grand strategy as well for killing all my battle line and not losing all the battle line, because it's still alive, and none of mine are, because the Liberators are the brought back from the dead units, so they don't count. So, very, very disappointing result there, especially when it hinged on so many priority rolls. Just one of those 3 going my way, I think, drastically shifts the game here. Because as soon as I get the double turn, it really denies my opponent the chance to score points from that stage onwards, and it didn't happen. So 3 in a row. And that's what happens if you build a list like mine that's really good at double turns, and really is not great if it doesn't get double turns. So, yeah, because I'm dropping units out the sky who are sometimes failing their charges. You want double turn to make up for that. I'm dropping hard-hitting units out the sky, so if they go in and kill something, you then get another chance with them with a double turn. I'm dropping shooting units out the sky, who can then shoot you multiple times because of the double turn, and then unleash hell when you charge them, so just lots of shooting. So it's really built for the double turn. Some armies don't care if they get doubled. Look at Khorne, for example. So they have the ability to do stuff in the enemy hero phase to get into contact with your models, so they don't care if you have a turn because they can still tie you up. Anyone that can do anything out of sequence, charge in your turn, for example, or do other kinds of movements in your turn, they don't mind as much being doubled. Anything that can move or teleport away, for instance, doesn't care about getting doubled as much. So I took pictures of all the armies now, and we were doing our voting. We voted for our top 5. So I think, I'll try to remember which ones I voted for my top 5. So I voted for this. Now this is an unusual top 5 voting, because at this event, the whole standard was pretty good. There weren't any armies that totally blew me away, and I thought, yes, that's definitely going in at number 1. There were just a lot of good, solidly well-painted armies, and there were a few where it was mostly like contrast paints with not much else after that, which is obviously fine, getting it out on the table. But in terms of coolest army voting, I think this was one of mine. I thought all these trogs looked very good. This one actually won the coolest army award, this one. I think, in terms of pure painting quality, with the highlighting on it, it's definitely up there. Definitely could be the best. I didn't put it in my voting because I would like to see more going on. For a Sons of Behemat army, I'd like more on the base, I think. But it's still a very cool concept and executed very well. You can see the Kraken emerging there. There's some Bone Reapers. There are 2 Bone Reaper armies, actually. I can't remember which ones got my votes from this point. There's some Sylvaneth. This is the Sylvaneth I didn't face. There's the other Bone Reapers there. There are some Nurgle. I think this was one of my votes as well. So there's some Glotkin in there. Some very cool looking Nurgle-y stuff. There is a very spider-themed Gloomspite Gitz army. There is some Nighthaunt there, I presume. Are they Nighthaunt or are they Soul Blight Gravelords? Could be Gravelords, actually. Yeah, because those are skeletons, aren't they? Rather than ghosts. There is the Slaves to Darkness. There's the Sylvaneth that I faced. And some people didn't put their armies out, so obviously not too confident about being voted for. So there's some Khorne. This is one of the armies I would like to avoid in general. Khorne, I think they're pretty tasty. And mainly because, like I was just saying, my army lives for the double turn. Khorne are really good at countering the double turn. And some Seraphon. And there we go. So I can't remember which were in my top 5 exactly, because it's quite a competitive field in terms of coolest army, I thought. So on to the final round. And can I end the weekend with a win? Can I get some double turns? Can I lay some whoopage down? Limited resources. So it's the most needlessly convoluted battle plan, but if you understand it, it is actually quite cool. So, 6 objectives. If you control any single objective for 2 of your turns consecutively, it is then switched off and you can never use it ever again. But your opponent can. So, if you score the objective, then your opponent takes it off you, and then you take it back off them. You have then scored it for 2 of your turns back to back. It ignores if it gets stolen, it's only looking at your turns. So if you control it for those 2 turns in a row, it's then switched off and you can never use it again. So, the tactics that you want to use here are not setting off too many objectives at once, and tricking your opponent into activating too many objectives, and then leaving them alone, not taking them off them, letting them have those objectives for 2 turns in a row, and then they're switched off and the enemy can't use them again. So keep your potential scoring high by not activating too many objectives, and lure your opponent into activating too many objectives. Those are the tricks you want to use here. And I'm up against Bone Reapers. This is another one of the armies that I think is a tough matchup because there's Catacross in there, who is like the ultimate I will not die model. About 20 wounds, 500 points, heals himself really easily, lots of healing sources. Bone Reapers in general, they bring models back, they heal models. It's just the kind of stuff you don't want if you can chip damage onto the enemy because they just heal. The one unit that can't be brought back is the Mortarks. There are 4 of them, so as soon as I hear they can't be brought back to life, I decide I'm going to put a bit of effort into whittling that unit down, because you can't whittle anything else down because they just come back to life. Anything else you have to focus on and kill it all in one go. So what else is in there? There's Catacross, there's Cavalos, which is another hero. There is a Bone Shaper, who is, let's see, a grand strategy is keep an Andorian Locust alive, or Locust, not Locust. Andorian Locust, and that is the Bone Shaper, so you have to keep him alive as the grand strategy. The Bone Shaper is somewhere back there, behind the piece of terrain. So that Bone Shaper, lots of the way the Bone Reapers work, they have loads of command points, but they need to use them all to buff up their units. Because I assume their profiles are like slightly worse for the points than they should be, because they're relying on them issuing 1 billion commands per turn, because that's kind of how they are. They're just inanimate piles of bones that are being commanded by the heroes, so it's kind of thematic that they are buffed by those commands that they have 1 billion of. So they all want to be near Catacross, so they can get the full benefit. So he goes right in the middle of the army. So because there's 6 objectives, that's not a bad time to face him, because they are going to maybe spread out a bit as the game goes on. However, not necessarily, because they don't want to be activating too many at once, so they may just camp here, control 2 objectives, then when those have burned out, move forward, control these 2, then when those have burned out, move forward, control these 2. So they maybe don't have to spread out as much as you would think, just because there are 6 objectives on the table. So they want to be near Catacross, and there are other buffs and healing abilities that you want near the other units. And I've just spotted the Bone Shaper, actually, he's right there. So the Bone Shaper has Merciless Blizzard as well. Oh yeah, there's an Ossifector as well, who is the General. And wait a minute, which one's which? Which one's the Bone Shaper, which one's the Ossifector? I do not have any idea. So the one that has to be killed for the grand strategy is the one that's hiding over here. And the one with Blizzard, okay, that's the one with Blizzard over there. So that's the Bone Shaper in the top left, and then the Ossifector is the one, let's see, I would have to kill for the grand strategy. I would have to kill that one, who is over here somewhere. Yeah, because that's the General. There are 5 Cavalos Death Riders, and that's 2 units of them. So that's the cavalry here, the Skeletal Knights. There are 3 Immortis Guard, which are the bodyguards of the Bone Shaper. So when the Bone Shaper takes damage, it can quite easily pass the wounds off onto the Immortis Guard. And then there are the 4 Morghast up there, which are a very scary unit, which I can whittle. And there's the Bone Tithe Nexus, which is here, which if I get near to it, I can have some horrible effect applied to my units. So what's my plan? You'll notice I've only deployed on 1 objective, because I don't want to set this one off yet. My plan is to not activate the objectives. Activate as few as possible, and try and make my opponent activate as many as possible early on. So it's really difficult for them to score late in the game, and easy for me to score when my units come down, because I'm not really going to have much on the table at the start anyway. So I don't mind burning off one of my objectives, so that's why I'm touching this one. I've got everyone else. They're not too worried about being charged in turn 1, especially. And I've got the one guy I do care about down here, the Imperator, because I need him for my 7-inch drops out the sky, so he's hiding. I've got these guys in shooting range of the Mortarks, because I've earmarked them as target numero uno. So will my opponent be tempted to take the first turn? Well, if you don't take it, you might lose some Mortarks to shooting. That's about it. If you do take it, then yeah, you can just move up onto the objectives you want. Nothing too scary is going to happen. But you then let me get the double turn. So you don't want the first turn. So my opponent elects to give me the first turn, as you would expect. So magical dominance, because I've got wizards who aren't in range to be unbound. So my liberators move up and don't touch the objective. I don't want that yet. However, I do want this one. So the Knight Zephyros is tagging this objective. So I now hold 2 objectives to score the maximum. However, the key here is that this objective, my opponent might have been thinking about dodging this one. So now, if you want to take this objective off me, if you want to kill the Knight Zephyros, you then have to come onto the objective to take it off me. Which means the objective will then become yours, which means I have used my devious scheme to trick you into taking this objective, so the Knight Zephyros can leave. If it survives, it can just teleport away. And then you are stuck holding this objective, which is then going to burn it out. So, see, we're thinking here. Which means that if this objective gets burned out, the enemy then have to move forward quicker, which leaves gaps behind them for the Annihilators to land in. So let's see if this devious ploy works. Turn 1, I bring the Shield Annihilators in, because if you look over in the top left here, there is a nice spot for them to drop down here where they can do mortal wounds to 4 different units. And I'm not going to bring the Grand Hammers down because this isn't a prime target over here, the Bone Shaper. So they're going to drop there, do mortal wounds, charge in, try and kill the Bone Shaper. That's it. And then maybe kill those guys as well if I get lucky, but that would be a bonus. So they come down, they kill the Bone Shaper, and they kill one of the Immortis Guard. So the Bone Shaper was passing off wounds quite well to the Immortis Guard, but eventually fails to do so. And because when they charged in, they did mortal wounds. A few of those were passed off, but not all of them. And then they were able to punch the Bone Shaper and finish it off, and then kill one of the Immortis Guard as well because of the wounds that were passed along. So yeah, that's a good start. Got the Spellcaster with Blizzard killed, and the Annihilators are still alive with 1 model, which is crucial to stop that unit from moving forward and doing anything. So what would I like the enemy to do here? I would like them to step on lots of objectives. I've only really encouraged them to step on this one though. They're already touching this one, so that would be 2 that they held there, which is how many you would want anyway, but you maybe wouldn't want this one immediately. Maybe? It depends what their strategy is, I suppose. So I get 5 points. My opponent goes for magical dominance as well. And because of that, I make the Knight Zephyros an unbinder. Now, the reason for this, one of these wizards can do 2 spells because they're going second. So one of them can be auto-cast, which means I can't unbind it even if I'm an unbinder, which means they can succeed with the battle tactic. But critically, it means that the wizard can't afford to then cast a second spell, because if I unbind it, the battle tactic would fail. So it forces the wizard to only use 1 spell. So they do autocast, and there's a buff being placed onto the Mortarks. You'll see one of them was actually shot down by the long strikes in the last turn. I almost killed one of them with Thunderbolt Volley, and then in the shooting phase I shot one and did some more damage to another one. So killing one, I'll take that because they are not coming back to life. Some of the cavalry are chasing down my Liberators. And the Knight Zephyros decides to... I'd have a little go at a redeploy, because I think if you fail your charge, you're just stuck there and I'm still alive. And if you want to attack me, you're pretty much going to still be on the objective anyway. Now, what I did realise after I did it was that, actually, I suppose if they charge me, they could then pile in round this way and not tag the objective, which defeats the purpose of what I was doing. So yeah, maybe shouldn't back away there. But I thought maybe if I can make you fail the charge, you kind of stranded there, and then I can still use this model. So maybe that was me getting greedy there. So the Mortarks go into the middle. So there is a charge there into the Knight Zephyros, and the Knights into the Liberators. 1 dead from the impact hits. And then the Liberators get to fight. The Annihilator gets to do some fighting. Doesn't die. The Knight Zephyros takes some wounds. The Liberators all die, so I bring in a fresh unit. Now, I'm glad that the Liberators were killed here, because it allows me to put a unit of them down here and protect the long strikes. So the Mortarks are only just up there. here. So if they wanted to come after the long strikes, it would mean a really, really long charge to hit the back of the Liberators and then pile into the long strikes, who are going to redeploy if anyone comes too close as well. So the Liberators being here is actually much better for me. So the last one dying actually worked out great. Oh, you can see here. So the Mortarks are not that close, so they can get to about here. And the back one in particular is going to struggle to land on the other side of the Liberators with anything less than a massive charge roll. And the fact that my Annihilator and the Knight Zephyros lived. So you can see I've put tokens down on the objectives that I was holding, and then when I add a second token to that, or I'll flip it over and show that that objective is now no longer eligible for me to take. So if I hold this one at the end of my next turn, which I will do because the enemy aren't coming near it. Actually, no. Ignore what I just said there. So the enemy could take this one off me. They've already taken this one, so as long as I don't go back on it next turn, I can wait for that one to burn off from the enemy. So, because they wanted to kill my Liberators, they are now holding 3 objectives. So I'm going to try and let all of those burn out. So I'm not going to try and reclaim any of those 3 objectives from the enemy now. Just going to let them burn and then limit what my opponent can control for the rest of the game. They'd be limited to these 3. So 5 points scored, and I win the priority roll and I give my opponent the next turn. So why am I doing this? Well, I want the double turn, of course. Also, what are they really going to do? Some of their units are stuck in combat with my kind of expendable units over there, so they're not going anywhere. The Mortarks are probably going to kill the Liberators. These Knights could maybe... They would have to make a long charge for the long strikes as well, because the long strikes are going to redeploy if anyone gets within 9 of them, which they may do. Something could potentially come within 9. These Knights could get down here and kill one of my heroes, but not the Imperator, who's the important one, because he's quite far away. So my opponent goes for bait the trap, so retreat with 2 units, charge with 2 units, which is a good time to do it because you've got 2 units in combat, but this guy can retreat and charge. So that's quite a cool move there, because he can retreat and then charge back in and still kill the Zephyros. So I make this character an Unbinder again, which forces my opponent to use a spell that is not Mystic Shield, because Mystic Shield can't be auto-cast. So that's why I turn her into an Unbinder, because I don't want Mystic Shield to be cast. It's going to make it even harder for me to kill some of those units. So I've got -1 to hit has been put onto the long strikes by Catacross, because he just does that. He points at someone and says, "Oh, you, -1 to hit for the turn until my next hero phase." The Mortarks move up to the Liberators, and they do actually get to within 9 of the long strikes, which means that I'm able to redeploy away. So the Knights are coming round as well, so they have a long charge. I think that's about a 10. The Mortarks, to get to the long strikes, they would need to roll a 12-inch charge, I think, to get this back guy over the top of the Liberators, which is the only way that they would have any chance of reaching this unit. They've got a slightly easier time. So the Liberator screen doing its job so far. We've got some Knights down here that do make a charge into the Incantor. They had a choice of whether to hit the Incantor or the Relictor, and they decided to go for the Knight Incantor, who can of course unbind spells, and the Relictor is the General. So this is a key point here. I pointed out this was my General. My opponent chose not to attack my General. That is because my opponent does not want to open up the reprisal battle tactic, because if they killed the General, me killing this unit would give me a battle tactic then. And they are not the toughest unit to kill in the army by any means, so they would be a good target for me to kill. So maybe I was almost hoping they would kill my General just for that. But ideally you don't want your General dying early anyway. So these guys do not charge far enough to reach the long strikes. They successfully murder the Liberators, and they're not able to get to within range to fight the long strikes. So, importantly, they could have potentially piled in 3 inches and dragged the long strikes into combat, but not close enough to fight them. So, even though they're dragged into combat, I can still translocate them out of combat anyway, so it wouldn't really help tagging them into combat. It makes me use a translocate on them, if that's something that you feel is important, so maybe it's worth doing, because there is a dice roll attached to that, so it could fail. So, then the Knight Incantor survives the Knights, and the Knight Zephyros gets killed by this bad boy, whose name I've forgotten. That is the Liege Cavalos there. So, I now have the next turn. None of my good stuff is on the table yet. I've got a potential double turn coming up. What am I going to do? I'm not even going to bother trying to kill... what's his face? Catacross, because he's got too many wounds. So unless I'm desperate, I'm not going to bother attacking him. I am going to try and relocate my battle line over to the other side. So I'm going to try and hopefully send the long strikes over there. Still in range to shoot the Mortarks, possibly. Or I could leave them here and translocate myself. I don't know if she's in translocate range. I'm going to bring down Tempesters, I'm going to bring down Annihilators, and I'm going to try and kill stuff. So one important thing about this list I haven't mentioned actually, the Bone Reapers, they can countercharge. So if you make a charge move, once you've completed your charge move, any enemy units that you haven't just charged into, that are within 12 of that unit, can then declare a charge. And it doesn't have to be at that unit. So if you're setting up multiple charges nearby to each other, they can actually be the one to charge you on some of those. So you've got to be very careful. So my plan is to not charge multiple targets in the same place. And not charge anyone who's near one of my other units. Or like this situation, if I charge into these Knights, let's say, with Annihilators, that would set off the Mortarks, who could then charge the long strikes. So we don't want that to happen, so I'm just going to try and shoot this area up where there's two units close together. I also want to kill the General, because that's denial of the grand strategy. So, on to my turn to surround and destroy. So I'm going to take some table edges. I'm going to plop some Annihilators down in the middle, do some mortal wounds splashed around, and the one I want to charge is the General. I also want to tag Catacross into combat so he can't charge me, or anyone else for that matter. Fulminators land here on the left flank, staring at these two. You'll notice how I'm not on the objective, because I don't want to set it off yet. The Annihilator just moves over here to take the table edge with a run move. The Imperator is up there, so I think I translocated him at this stage. So, the Incantor is still in combat, and I think that's just purely because I forgot to move her out of combat, possibly. And down here, the Tempesters drop in right there, and we start blasting away at the Knights. And there's only one model left. The Annihilators failed their charge, I think, so that's unfortunate. And the Knights do not take this objective off me, which is important because that means I'm going to burn this one out, which is what they would like. So I've scored 5 again because I'm holding this objective. You can see where I've put the Caradron Overlord face, that means the enemy can no longer score those objectives. So they've lost 3 of their objectives now. And they've just taken this one. So if I don't take this one off with them, which I'm probably not going to do, I might just leave this one for them to have, so that one's burned out as well. They have not taken this one, because the Knight Incantor is worth the same as 2 of those. So what I actually wanted to do here was move her away from them, so they wouldn't be fighting anymore. But I think I forgot to do that. So, scored. Who's going to get the priority? It's me. We've got the double. So the fact the Annihilators failed their charge is less of an issue, because I drop down some more Annihilators and go for the Mortarks. The Tempesters go for the final Knight, who they obviously obliterate. And these Annihilators actually do really horrifically bad against the Mortarks. And I think they just do 1 wound, which is really awful. The Knight Relictor has a 5-inch charge into these Knights. So, what I'm doing here is, I think I'm doing the Led into the Maelstrom. Yeah, there we go. So I need a battle line unit to charge, which I do. I think they charge, and another unit as well. But I need one of my heroes to charge. So a rerollable 5-inch charge for the Knight Relictor. Fails. So I've got to fall back to the Lord Imperatant with a 6-inch charge. And he fails as well. So failed battle tactic, because with 3 attempts I couldn't roll a 6, and then I couldn't roll a 5 or another 5. Whack whack wow. So this Annihilator, who's still alive on his own, is just running around, just causing mischief. Fulminators charge into these, what are those ones called again? The Immortis Guard, yeah. So these Annihilators do almost nothing there, which is embarrassing. And I all-out defense the Fulminators so they don't get killed. The Annihilators do make it into the enemy general this time and completely murder him. And they do some wounds to Catacross as well, which is very nice. And the enemy pile in a bit further into the Knight Incantor and kill her, which means that this objective is not going to be burned out for me now because I'm no longer holding it. So the enemy have taken this one off me. So unless I take it back again next turn, this one will not burn out now. It'll be eligible for me to use later in the game. So when the Fulminators piled in, they tagged this objective. So I'm holding 2 again, and I've cleared out those guys there. Cleared out the Immortis Guard. The Annihilators get killed by Catacross, but that was expected, and I wanted the enemy general dead to deny the grand strategy. So these Annihilators just did really badly and then got killed, so that was just a disaster. So as far as double turns go, it actually wasn't that devastating, because the unit of Annihilators failed horribly, and I kind of wanted the Tempestors into combat here as well, but I couldn't shoot this guy off fast enough, so I had to actually charge him and kill him, I think, in the end. I teleported the long strikes over there, and that encouraged the what are they even called again? There's so many units to keep track of, isn't there? The Morghasts. They were encouraged to redeploy because I came closer, because I wanted to charge them with the Tempestors. And unfortunately I didn't kill the Knight fast enough. And I think I actually may have shot it off in the end, but I didn't then successfully make a charge into them with the Tempestors anyway. Which is sad, but the reason they redeployed is because they wanted to get out of range of the long strikes, so then they put a couple of wounds on Catacross, I think. So, we've whittled down the enemy numbers quite significantly. We've killed whole units, so these two are never getting any more models. We've killed a full unit of Knights there, killed all the Spellcasters, denied the enemy grand strategy, and we've got 1 unit of Annihilators left. So into the enemy turn 3, surround and destroy, take table edges, and I've got a command point there on the Knight Relictor. Catacross is just sitting in the middle to try and spread his buffs around to everyone. Knights head for the edge, this hero heads for the edge, and they head for the edge. Now, they both want to charge the Tempestors, but the Tempestors redeploy rather than unleash hell. You might think that's wild, but you can't use commands when this unit is close to you. So, you can't unleash hell against them. So I redeploy, hoping that I would roll 5 or 6, so I could go far enough away so that they couldn't charge me and still meet the battle tactic criteria. Because they would have to move outside of 6 inches of this edge to reach me. But unfortunately I only rolled a 4, so I decided to just go backwards instead, because it wasn't far enough. So it makes it a little bit harder for them, and if this guy wants to charge me, he has to be careful, because if I lose a model and then he piles in, he then moves out of 6 of the edge as well. So these guys do make it in, the Mortarks, and the Liege Cavalos makes it in as well. The Bone Shapers kill 1. I think 1 dies from impact hits, possibly. So he's gone. They pile in, they do a bit of damage, and he can't pile in now because he'll then go outside of 6 of the table edge, so he isn't able to fight. Otherwise they'd fail the battle tactic. So that objective is now wiped out for me. I can't use that one anymore. My opponent can't use any of these 4 anymore because I've been staying off objectives that my opponent tagged early so they would burn out. So my opponent scores 3 points for only holding 1 objective, which is The one that was just burned out. So was that possibly that one or that one? Well, either way, it's burned out now, so they can't score it again. So, my comical failed battle tactic has let down my score a little bit with the failed short-range charges. So it's very close at the moment. My opponent gets the first crack at round 4, though. So a double turn, and Led into the Maelstrom is selected. So, charge in with a hero and a battle line unit, and one of them still be in combat at the end. So there's a hero here who can easily get into combat, and there's a battle line unit there who could potentially... So I redeploy away from the knights to try and stop them getting into combat with me, which would deny them the battle tactic. This guy gets in, the Tempestors are slowly being whittled down, and they do make it in with a charge. I think it was about... how far does that look like? About 7. So they do get in though. And the enemy hero phases are getting shorter now because all the spellcasters are dead. And yeah, they've got into combat, so you can tell if the Fulminators are hit first by the enemy, then I put all-out defense on them. Whoever gets struck first, I all-out defense basically. And then these guys can't have any command spot on them because those big lads are right there. The Morghasts. So the Tempestors still getting whittled, and one of the Fulminators dies. So, and the last Tempestor's gone as well. So, not a great turn for me, but could get another double though, coming up now. So with my turn 4, intimidate the invaders, so just more of my units in the enemy half, which I already have. And so the reason I'm actually feeling confident now is because my opponent is currently holding this objective. That is the only one that my opponent has not burned out. So my opponent can't hold any more objectives apart from this one. I have translocated my Relictor onto this one to tap it, so I'm now holding this one and this one. And all the objectives apart from that one, I can hold pretty much for the rest of the game. I don't know about this one. I think am I holding that one now? I'm not sure. But I've got several objectives. I still haven't done anything with this one or this one. I can still go for those two, and I've got these ones for 2 turns. So I'm going to be able to score big for the rest of the game. My opponent is not, because he's only got 1 objective to score. So the shenanigans with the scenario are starting to pay off now in the later turns. So with my turn, intimidate invaders, get everyone out of my territory, which is easy enough, and score 5. I then, my opponent then goes in round 5 for intimidate the invaders as well, which is going to be scored, but only has 1 objective to score now, so only gets 3. So there's just not much going on, so that's why there's no pictures of that turn, because there was no attacks made. The enemy are just getting onto the 1 objective they can have, and then trying a 12-inch charge into my Fulminator to deny my grand strategy, because I've killed all their battle line now. As you can see, the Annihilators, who rallied a model, joined in the fight in those knights with the Fulminator and finished them off. So that's all enemy battle line dead, so if this Fulminator lives to see the end of the game, I get my grand strategy. So, on to my turn 5, and secure the battlefield, 1 unit in each table quarter, not touching anyone, the easiest one in the world, for Stormcast now. Relictor's in that one, he's there. I've got the Fulminator, moves into this quarter, and I've got someone down here as well, who, there might not be a picture of them. So I score big in the last round, because I've got loads of objectives. There's still objectives that I've never touched that I still could, theoretically, so it's all looking good for me at the end of the game here. The enemy have got... what's left? There's him, there's Catacross, there's the hero, and there's 2 models down there as well. I think that's it. So I killed all the battle line, got my grand strategy, scored 3 in the last round, because... Okay, yep, I remember now. So I failed that last battle tactic, which should be the easiest one in the world, because I failed my translocation roll with the Lord Relictor, or the Knight Relictor, on a 3-up. So the long strikes were able to get into this one. The Fulminator was able to get into this one. The Relictor just needed to teleport himself, like here, and that was a battle tactic, but I failed the rerollable 3+. So lots of easy rolls being failed at this event for me. Quite a few in this game as well. to deny 2 battle tactics, but with the grand strategy, that is enough to just tip me into a win by 2 points. So, I did get a double turn in this game. It didn't actually have the impact I would have liked because the 1 unit of Annihilators just failed horribly at killing the unit they were fighting, which was the Morghast that were here. So it didn't work out that great. The Bone Reapers are a really tough matchup though. They're really tough to kill. So I think putting resources into killing the stuff that was killable worked out well for me in the end, because they just ran out of units around the table. They didn't have any knights, they didn't have any spells to cast. They killed all the spellcasters. Killed everything that was killable, basically, and only the really, really tough stuff. And even that, I'd made that unit less potent, the Morghasts, by killing some of them early on as well. So, overall, I think I did a decent job there for the most part. I think I did well not to take objectives back off the enemy, minimising which objectives I was holding, making sure that they burned out their objectives very early, which they did. So for the last couple of turns, of the last turn in particular, they were unable to score 3 points, and 3 points in that round as well, where they were just running out of objectives they could feasibly score, which was nice. So, a win to end, and 2 wins, 3 losses. There were definitely the round 4 game, I think. All I needed was one of those priority rolls to go my way, one of the 3, and I think I would have had a really good chance to win that. Game 1, if I'd got the double turn, I don't know if it would have necessarily led to a win, but it would have made the game very close, because I would have been in a very good position to do some more killing and to prevent more enemy scoring, which is an issue if you don't get the double with this list. So, thoughts on the list in general. I like it. I like having the Shield Annihilators in there as well. They do a good job. There are some targets that the Grand Hammers are just too good to chase after. It's just a waste of their output. So the cheaper Shield Annihilators that are slightly more survivable are a decent, cheaper alternative in the list, because they're only 150 points. The fancy Annihilators with the big hammers are 200 points. So 50 points you're saving there. So I like them for that role, just going after units that the Grand Hammers it's not worth going after. And having 3 Annihilator units means that 3 times the drop down mortal wounds, 3 times the charge mortal wounds. And yeah, early on in the game, sometimes it's not open for the Grand Hammers yet, but you still want to throw something in, so you use these cheap guys instead. I like them. I like the list. Is it lacking anything? I don't know, I just think it's a good list. It's a good all-round kind of list. It's got lots of hammer units, got lots of damage output. If you can get double turns, it's very devastating. If you don't get double turns, it's still alright. And the issue is, of course, that you're never going to choose who's going first. So your opponent can always make you go first. Can this list be compressed down into way less drops? Possibly. I will look and have a look to see whether that is actually feasible, how many drops I could get it down to, and whether it's actually worth doing that. Because if you end up like 4 or 5 drops, is it even worth it then? Because you're still going to be outdropped by most armies, because most things come in probably like 2 or 3 drops seems to be the average at the moment that I'm seeing. Occasionally there'll be one that's like 7, because like me, they're not bothered about going first or second. So I think what I'm looking at with this list is that maybe, because I was forced to go first a lot, maybe I wasn't offering enough juicy bait on the hook to make my opponent take the first turn. Maybe I wasn't dangling enough in front of them as an incentive. Maybe the battle plans make a difference as well, and it depends what army you come up against. Because if you don't need to get defensive buffs up in turn 1, and if there's no way you're going to be boxed in turn 1, then those are 2 factors. So in those situations, do I put more stuff on the table in mid to long range charge distance of you, just to tempt you to take the first turn? That might be something I have to look at if I'm going to keep with this many drops. Because I have to give my opponent something, some reason to take the first turn. Because otherwise, as we saw against the Trogs, I can just be denied the double for the whole game by just being forced to go first until it's too late. So, interesting, some things to think about there. Overall though, I'm pretty happy with this. I think the list did decent, even though it's maybe not reflected in the final number of wins. I think if we look at the games and look at the dice rolls involved in them, it was very feasible that some of those could have swung. The one that I was least confident in was the troll list, just because of the bubble of trolls that didn't have to break the bubble. So I don't know if that would have changed too much if I'd got a double turn, possibly. But it was still going to be difficult to crack through them. So I think that was the toughest matchup, just from my perspective anyway. The giants are always tough because they've got so many wounds, so it's difficult to kill one a turn. But I do have the damage output, and with a double turn, because I did kill one of them, and then with the double I could have killed or seriously weakened another ready for later, but as it was I ended up not killing very many of them, because I didn't get that double. So very reliant on the double turn. There you go. So there's the list, quite happy with it. Don't forget to leave any comments. Oh, we've got Martin J in the chat. Hello there. Good evening. We're just about to wrap this one up. But obviously people can watch it after the fact and then leave comments. Don't forget to subscribe, obviously, and all the social media shenanigans in the video description. Don't forget to give me all your life savings so I can attend loads of tournaments. Either there's PayPal or Patreon down there as well. At the moment, I think the level the Patreon is at, it pays for about a third of an average Age of Sigmar ticket per month at the moment. Not very high. The Andy and Rem show, which also covers Age of Sigmar, was back recently. We're going to try to get more regular shows in, despite Mr. Rem being an international touring rock star, so it's a bit tricky to fit that in around his schedule at the moment. But yeah, do all those things. And last thoughts on the list. The Liberators, I've been using Vanquishers recently because they've been cheaper than Liberators, but now that Liberators have come down in price, in points, they're more tempting, and I did enjoy the extra save that they give you. The Annihilators combo that's now come drastically down in price with the Imperatant, I really like that still. I was running it more expensive, so I'm very pleased. Shield Annihilators I like now. I think they're a good force to be reckoned with. The thing they're competing with is the Chariot. So, what does the Chariot have going for it? Well, it's more wounds, so it's more survivable, and it's -1 for you to hit it on the turn that it charges. It does the same wounds, the same impact hits as Annihilators. It has less damage output after charging. It can't be dropped in 7 inches away. And you can't rally it, I suppose, would be another thing. In general, the Chariot's just a bit tougher, more survivable, but it also misses out on the 7-inch charge, which the Annihilators are obviously great for, and also it can't issue commands to itself, which is another issue with the Chariot. So the Chariot is one I like to combine with Bastion, because he can issue commands anywhere, or a command anywhere on the table, so he's a good one to use with that. So yeah, that's what they've moved into competition with now, with this current points that they're at. So when they were back at like 190, I wouldn't even consider taking them over a Chariot, but at 150, yes, I like them at that level. Long strikes still make it in there. 1 unit rather than 2. Because I think that you can fit a lot of other cool stuff in there now, and the long strikes are on the expensive side for how many wounds they have in the unit. So I don't think 2 are really necessary. If I were to squeeze in 2, what would I have to drop? You'd end up dropping like half the Tempesters, which makes them nowhere near as good of a unit, and they're really scary as they are, so I want to keep them as a 4. You could take out the Fulminators, which are also very scary. One of the important hammer units. So, don't know. So, now that Liberators are cheaper, and now that I've got more points to play with, the other option I have is to run a different sub-faction. So, Astral Templars is always tempting to avoid taking the monstrous rampages. But, on the other hand, are there going to be monsters all the time? There weren't any monsters in the Bone Reaper list, for example. There weren't even many in the Troggoth list. So some lists just don't have any monsters. The Astral Templars aren't that great. I could pick the one that gives the Paladin units battle line, which would make the Annihilators battle line, which means I don't even need to take any Liberators at all, which means I would have how many points left over if I took the Liberators out? I would have 110 points left over then. Because they're 100 and I've got 10 left over as it is. So what would I get with 110 points with no Liberators? Not a huge amount. I could upgrade another unit actually. So I could upgrade the... Let's see. Do the Quest or Soulsworn become battle line in that subfaction as well? Let's have a look. So, are they considered paladins? I'm not certain that they are. So I don't think they would count as battle line in that situation, unless someone knows different, because I don't see paladin in their keywords, which is on the other paladins. And I think it's paladin units that become battle line, so I would have to keep 3 Annihilator units in order for that subfaction to work if I'm dropping the Liberators. So 110 points, what comes in? Let's see, scrolling down, who is 110 points? A Knight Arcanum? No. Can't afford the Knight Azeros. Can't afford another Knight Incantor. I could afford another Knight Zephyros. But I've only got one at the moment, but I could always get another. So that would actually be quite a good choice, I think, for battle tactics and for scoring, hopping around. Could afford a Lord Ordinator? No. Could afford Neve Blacktalon, who's just kind of a worse Knight Zephyros, I think, at the moment. I don't know about her new rules, actually, because she's got a new model, hasn't she? So I need to look into that. I could afford any of the other Redeemer units, other than Liberators. So I could bring Vanquishers still, because they're 100 points as well. So it's just be swapping out kind of an identical unit almost. Anyone else at 110 as I'm scrolling down here? Prosecutors with hammers? Prosecutors. Where would they come in handy? Bring in Prosecutors instead of Liberators. They would be good for... they've got a 3d6 charge, so they are good for absorbing and unleash hell. That's a good use for Prosecutors. Maybe. I don't know if people particularly rate Prosecutors at the moment. They don't have a lot of wounds in the unit. Anything else come in at 110 points or less? Vanguard Hunters, I don't have any. So yeah, not a huge amount of options at that level if the Liberators come out of the list and I switch subfaction. Yes, interesting. There's also the option of going for 3 regular Redeemer units, ditching something else out the list, and going with Gardas to get the ward save. Because I find the 6-up ward save is kind of worthless in this army. I'm sure it's not. Statistically, it's not worthless. But I can't really remember passing any significant ward saves at this event. It's the same as the Stormcast blowing up when they die on 6s. I can't remember. Maybe once, maybe in game 1, I think they might have killed a mini Gargant by exploding. Other than that, I don't think it did any significant damage throughout the whole event, all 5 games blowing up on death. So, anything that's on a 6, it feels like it doesn't come up very often. But when it does come up, it can be quite memorable. So, I like the list though, but I do like to mix up my lists. As you know, I've got loads of models, so I don't want to run the same stuff over and over and over. I've also got my Sons of Behemat, who might come out next time. The next Age of Sigmar event I'm actually signed up for is late December. So I'll obviously keep my eyes peeled in the meantime, see if anything else pops up before then. In terms of events in general, there's a Kings of War one coming up. And that reminds me, actually, I think I need to submit my list for that Kings of War tournament next weekend. I think I'm going to submit a list with some units in that I haven't even started painting yet. So that should be fun, seeing if I can get those painted over the next week. I have got tomorrow off work and Wednesday. So I might get time to finish painting those units. And what else have I got? Where's my calendar? Okay, other tournaments. So there's that Kings of War next week. There's Kings of War early December. There is Dead Zone early December as well. Actually playing Dead Zone instead of running Dead Zone tournaments for a change. And yeah, then the Sigmar one late December. So I need to sign up for some more tournaments, don't I? So, like the video, subscribe, all the social media stuff, give me all your life savings. And other than that, I think all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.